Good afternoon, everyone. Welcome to today's Planning Committee meeting. Those members of the press and the public who join us via the live stream. Before we begin, can I take this opportunity to remind everyone to turn their mobiles and computers to silent and ensure when using the microphones the red light is on and then turned off when you have finished speaking. We'll now go to agenda item 1, and I'd like to ask member services if we have any apologies for absence, and it's Jo this afternoon.
Good afternoon. Apologies received today from Councillor Gershner.
Yeah, thank you, Jo. Now we go to agenda item number 2, which is urgent items. There are none. 3 is declarations of interest. Member services will now go to each councillor in turn, and can you please state if you've anything to declare in relation to any agenda item on this afternoon's agenda. Thank you, Jo.
Thank you, Chairman. Councillor Benny.
Yeah, thank you, Jo. Just I'm a member of Chatteris Town Council, but I take no part in planning or decision making there. I do know Matthew Hall, as I always declare. He's done work for me in the past. He works for Morton Hall, and I have been lobbied on item 10 this afternoon. I believe that's an en-bloc one that we've all had.
Whilst we're at this position, can I have a show of hands for those members that have been lobbied en bloc, please? That's unanimous. Thank you. Councillor Connor.
Yeah, thank you, Jo. I used to live next door to Mr. and Mrs. Baxter Senior at the Walnuts, which was my home address for many years. Mr. Baxter has now passed, and the applicant, Mr. and Mrs. Baxter Jr., whose application this is, used to visit their parents on numerous occasions, and we did exchange pleasantries over the time. But since then, it's many years since I've left the Walnuts, but since then I've not spoken or seen the applicant, Mr. Miles Baxter, or his wife for 3 or 4 years. Time seems to move on fast, but it's certainly that time, if not more. And I will be keeping an open mind on this application today. Thank you.
Thank you. Councillor Mrs. French.
Thank you. Member of Marchtown Council, but take no part in planning.
Thank you. Councillor Mafferdon.
Thank you. Member of Wisbech Town Council. I am not a member of the planning committee there. I know Matthew Hall on the business level. Member of 1 IDB, and that's it. Thank you.
Thank you. Councillor Marks.
Thank you. Member of Mainey Parish Council, and I attend Chatteris Town Council on occasions. I take no part in either planning or any decision making there. On item 4, due to business reasons, I will not take part in the debate or anything to do with that, and I will actually leave the room whilst this item is being discussed. Item 5, I sit on an IDB with Mr. Hawes Senior. Also, just to make Councillor Mafferdon aware, so does he. Regarding Mr. Hawes Jr., I saw him at the gala, and we discussed the emerging village plan. I did not discuss this application in any part, and I also sit on a committee regarding Tilly the vintage fire engine with him as well. I do not socialise with either, and I'll keep an open mind. And regarding Mr. Matthew Hall, on Monday morning I was contacted by the police at 6:30 regarding an incident that happened at the Royal British Legion in Mainey, and they needed a structural engineer urgently. I did a Google search and found Morton Hall as they were able to do survey. So I contacted Matthew Hall, and he went out to do an emergency survey on the RBL for RBL. So I've had no direct dealings with him or used him at all. However, I thought it better to be transparent.
Thank you very much. Councillor Purser.
Yes, thank you, Chair. Yes, I'm a member of Marchtown Council, but I'm not a member of the planning committee. I take no part whatsoever in any planning or voting on that. I'm a member of the March East Internal Drainage Board. I also have done business with Mr. Matthew Hall previously, but we don't socialise at all. And having taken advice, I shall be stepping back from items 8 to leave the room during those discussions.
So you'll be leaving the meeting after agenda item 7?
I will, yes. Thank you.
Thank you, Chairman.
Much members. Thank you, Jo. Mifflin.
Just an additional declaration that I do know Chris from Bid Humphreys, who's done work for me in the past. Just a declaration, just to let everyone know.
That's noted, Joe, isn't it? Thank you very much. Anybody else got any more declarations to make before we close that part? Nope. Okay. Thank you. So we'll now go to the main part of the meeting. Members should only make a proposal on the planning application when invited to do so. However, I'll be initially asking if anybody's going to propose the officer's recommendation. Clearly, if no such proposal is forthcoming or that proposal fails, I'll be then looking for an alternative proposal. Members are reminded that any such proposal should be accompanied by the planning policy reasons for going against officer recommendation. So without further ado, I'll now hand over to Danielle Brooke. She's a Senior Development Officer here at Fenland to present agenda item 4 F/YR26 03230. So when you're ready, Danielle, thank you very much.
Thank you, Chair. Good afternoon, members. This application is for the erection of up to 9 dwellings involving the demolition of existing buildings and the formation of an access at 27B Westfield Road in Mainey. This is an outline application with matters committed in respect of access only. The site is located on the southern side of Westfield Road and extends to approximately half a hectare. The site is currently occupied by City First Tyres, with the yard used for external storage. The frontage comprises hard standing, including a mixture of gravel and concrete, with additional concrete surfacing surrounding the existing buildings. These buildings are constructed of brick and materials and appear to include asbestos cladding. The rear section of the site is undeveloped and overgrown with dense vegetation. Access is provided via 2 vehicular entrances from Westfield Road, one of which is shared with 27A Westfield Road, and this is a detached bungalow at the front of the site. The site lies in flood zone 1 and is therefore at low risk of fluvial flooding, and parts of the site are identified as having low risk of surface water flooding. The revised indicative layout shown here overcomes a number of design concerns that were identified in a previous refused application 250936 under delegated powers. In particular, this represents a more coherent and attractive internal layout, reduces the dominant of parking and frontage garaging, and provides a more legible relationship between the proposed dwellings and the internal access road as shown here. However, the application remains in outline form with matters committed in relation to access only, and therefore detailed matters of appearance, scale, landscaping and layout will be considered at reserved matters should permission be granted today. So here are some photos of the existing site. Photo 1 is the existing access with 27B Westfield Road to the right of the picture. Photo 2 shows the relationship between the existing site and dwellings at Bedford View, which is an adjacent residential development. Photo 3 shows existing workshops and buildings that are due to be demolished. And photo 4 shows the open land to the rear with other buildings on the site that are due to be demolished. So as I said, the proposal would deliver up to 9 dwellings and facilitate brownfield regeneration, with the commercial use being reallocated within this residential area, consistent with policies LP4 and MPPF chapters 5 and 11. The revised submission discussed today addresses the principal reasons for refusal on the earlier refused application, with an updated layout, ecological information and so on, and demonstrates that the site can accommodate the proposed development in accordance with the relevant policies. Highway concerns that were initially raised have been substantially overcome, and the Highway Authority raises no objection to the proposed access arrangements. Surface water drainage matters have been resolved, and the LLFA has withdrawn its objection following submission of an acceptable drainage strategy. Ecological matters have been addressed through additional survey works and mitigation measures, so subject to conditions, this would be compliant with policy. Anglian Water does maintain an objection regarding the foul drainage capacity in respect of Mainey. However, it can be addressed through a strategic foul water strategy and planning conditions, and therefore officers believe the matter is capable of resolution. On balance, the proposal would deliver decent housing, regenerate a brownfield site, and accords with the necessary policies of the MPPF and the local plan, and therefore is recommended to approval subject to conditions.
Righty-ho, thank you, Danielle. We have one speaker on this application. I'd like to ask Chris Walford, of course he's the agent, to make his presentation to the committee. You've got 5 minutes. Thank you.
Good afternoon, members. Firstly, I'd like to thank you for the opportunity to speak in support of this application. This application is an outline for up to 9 dwellings involving the demolition of an existing building to regenerate an existing brownfield site with a commercial use within a residential area and within the village settlement. The case officers have worked proactively with us to arrive at a scheme that has support from all technical consultees and is recommended for approval with the appropriate pre-commencement conditions. The site is in flood zone 1 and is therefore deemed sequentially preferable. The applicant's business, City First Hires, operates from the site, and the buildings are nearing the end of their practical lifespan, and therefore the time is right to consider relocation to a new commercial premises within the March area. The business will not be closing and the staff will be retained. City First Hires has multiple depots across the south and east of England, and they're looking to retain the premises in the March area to serve their existing long-standing customer base. That location hasn't been decided on yet, but this is the first hurdle to overcome, really. I hope this information has been useful, and I'm now available for any questions you may have, and I hope you can support this application.
So, members, invite questions, clarifications to Mr. Walford, please. Anybody got any questions? Councillor Mifferton, thank you.
Thank you, Chair. Can you just address the concerns that Anglian Water has about the drainage? How do you intend to resolve that? Thank you.
So, reading their comments, they've sort of said that there's a capacity issue there. We've got a specialist drainage consultant on board who's sort of advising us to wait for the condition and address it when we've got the time to do that. Obviously there is a main there. We could connect to it. We'd also consider a treatment plant system if they would accept it. But they're sort of in their wording, they've made it more clear. I think that they're looking at a fail connection into the sewer, which is fine. So we're open-minded either way. With the advice we've had is we can do it. It's just which route we go, and I think the officers are in the same boat really, that they feel we can achieve it. But it's a tricky one to get into a detail when we're at outline stage. We haven't got a committed site layout, so the impermeable areas aren't committed. So until we're at a point where we know it's principally okay, I think we need to agree on a design, work out what the area would be, what the flow would be, the density of the site, because it's up to 9. It could be less, or it could be less bedrooms, whatever, and then we can really get into it. But I think where everyone seems to be on the same page that there is a way through it. It's just probably a bit early outlined to nail it down.
Okay. Anybody else got any questions, clarifications to Mr. Walford before we let him go? No, thank you very much. So, questions to officers on this, please, if you have any. Councillor Benny, thank you.
Thank you, Chairman. Just one. I'm fairly certain of the answer, but for the purpose of transparency, Parish Council at Mainey wanted £2,000 a unit for this. We have had several discussions over this, as you know, over the week, and you've had letters back from the head of planning. A simple one-word answer would have sufficed, and I'm not entirely sure that we ever got the one-word answer. But my question is this subject to Section 106? My belief is it's 10 houses and above, but there's been a lot of speculation online that it's 5. Now, from what I've been told this week by yourself or from officers through yourself, it is 10. I would like to clarify that, because we've been getting a lot of bad publicity from this from Facebook. I don't agree with Facebook. I don't agree by tribal social media, but I would like to know, is this right? Because if it isn't right and it is 5, then this is where we need to clear this up. I mean, you know the amount of discussions you've had this week, and truly, I don't think we've had a one-word answer which should suffice. Is it 5? Is it 10? And I would like to know which it is, please, Mr. Chairman, and I'll put that to officers.
Come in just before. You're absolutely right, Councillor Benny. I spent half a mile this week on the phone and last week on the phone, as you well know, trying to get some clarification on where we are. We have had some bad press about what we're supposed to be doing, but I'll now hand over to Matt just to clarify up once and for all. Thank you.
Thank you, Chairman. I think the problem is that you can't give a one-word answer, because unfortunately as planning it's very rare that you can. Our IGN does state that we can look for contributions towards community facilities for between 5 and 9, so actually up to 5 to 250. However, that explicitly states when there is appropriate evidence base, and that then ties into, as always, our local plan, which says a similar thing about evidence base. Our local plan, as we all know, is old to some extent. A lot of the supporting documents, such as the infrastructure delivery plan, are out of date because developments have come, facilities have been delivered, things have changed. So the starting point at the moment, with no evidence base for anything else, is the local plan, and that only looks for 10. The reason we can only look for contributions on matters such as highways, education, NHS is because they are able to, on every application, evidence what the harm is from that development. Just because a community facility needs repair, needs maintenance, needs improving, and it can be a really valuable asset and enhancement, that doesn't mean that the Section 106 can ever achieve that. Section 106s can only ever wash their own face from the harm that's created from a new development. So it would be very unlikely in most instances that an existing facility that is in a poor state and needs repair would ever be able to get Section 106 funding, because that's not what funding is for. It is for the increase in occupiers. So what you would have to do is, for any scheme that was between 5 and 10, so like 5 to 9, be able to demonstrate how the occupiers from those dwellings alone created a level of demand, harm, etc., that required a financial contribution towards it. As I said, going back to again, without the IDP, it's almost impossible to do. It's not impossible, but it'd be very hard and difficult. But without that, it wouldn't be a set £2,000 per plot anyway. It would have to be, we would have to have understanding of what work was proposing, how much is it going to cost, where is the harm, what is the percentage from these 9 dwellings, 7 dwellings, 5 dwellings in relation to this. So as members know, we're looking at bringing forward a new local plan. Members know there's a lot of evidence based on that, and one of those is the infrastructure delivery plan. We're looking to bring forward that in a timely manner because that's a cornerstone of our LDP, and as you know, we're doing this in 30 months now. Once we have that, there may be a different conversation, but up until then, there won't be a different conversation. You're just going to get our policy as 10 because we have no evidence for anything else. And it will never, though, be probably looking to just solving existing problems, which is often what people mistake Section 106 for. It isn't a tax on a developer to alleviate the harm to the existing residents. Whether you like it or not, that isn't what Section 106 is. It's to mitigate the harm for the existing or from future dwellings. So further doctor surgery space, because you've got an X amount of people going to need a doctor, so you need to expand the surgery, etc. And that is one of the reasons why you don't normally look for lower than 10, because actually the amount of harm from those numbers is quite low, and therefore it's only when you start getting over that it really starts to demonstrate a real harm. So I know you wanted a one word answer, Councillor Benny, and I think I might have gone 1 or 2 words over that, but hopefully I've at least explained it a little bit and why it's not just a yes or no answer.
So thank you very much for explaining. You can, sorry.
Yeah, thank you very much. I fully appreciate where you are, and I've read the emails that have been bouncing backwards and forward this week, but we are tried by social media here. And as councillors, we are getting a lot of flack for this, and it's making us look bad when, from what we have been trained and what we have been told, we are adhering to policy. Is that correct?
Yeah, through you, Chairman, we have no evidence base for anything else, so at the moment it is 10. Yeah.
Right. You state that the policy is old, the local plan is old, but you've also told us in the past it may be old, but it is the local plan, and we still have to adhere to that. Now, also, you've said that you need evidence. Have Mainly Parish Council, the chairman, has he submitted anything as in a form of a case that would justify you looking at doing a 106 agreement to get some money out of these? Personally, I think that it is wrong that these few houses should have to bear the brunt of something that the whole of Mainly should pay for if it's going to. I accept that there is funding, but as you say, it's not a tax on development, is it?
I don't think it's appropriate to comment on any particular scheme or any particular conversation I have or haven't had. But all I will say is, as I go back to what I said earlier, is I would need evidence that shows these new number of properties are going to result in a harm that requires a new community facility or an enhancement to an existing community facility. Evidence on an existing problem that they want to resolve would not fall under the Section 106 requirements. That would not provide evidence for Section 106. If we had seal, which because of viability reasons, let's not even get onto that conversation. It might be a different conversation, but under Section 106, all we can look at do is to try and provide funding to alleviate the harm from new development. We cannot look at alleviating harm of existing issues. And what I can say generally is, and I'm not talking about one in particular, but since I've been here at Fenland, when people have engaged with me about smaller schemes or community facilities, it's normally about an existing problem that they would like to resolve. But that's not how Section 106 works, so we can't as a council support that. But I would just say if there's an existing, as always, if there's an existing problem, it's very unlikely Section 106 will resolve that. There can be planning gain and betterment, and that's why you like to have 200 houses or 500 houses, because there's already an existing issue in doctors. That level of housing may solve that problem through delivering what it needs anyway. But on a small scheme, it's very unlikely that you're going to resolve any existing issue through a 8-unit scheme or anything. But yeah, thanks, Chairman.
So to sum it all up in a nutshell, this application will not, in my opinion, going after many, many conversations, will not be subject to any 106 obligations.
Yeah, I'd like to say thank you, Matt. I've asked you this question because there is a big misconception as to how 106 works, and there is a big misconception how we've been behaving as a planning committee, and that needs to be aired here. So the members of the public see what we're doing is adhering to policy, and that was why I asked the question, and thank you. I feel you've clarified that quite clearly. Mr. Chairman, I would be interested in your thoughts on this matter as well.
Absolutely, Councillor Benny. I won't go into it, but we've had lots of bad press, like I alluded to earlier. We've been slated by various newspapers, and certainly by the chair of Mainly Parish Council, saying we haven't done due diligence. And it's always been my belief that we've acted to policy. Not always perhaps the right result for officers. We've gone against officers on numerous occasions, but we've always, in my opinion, worked to policy. And this policy on this 10 houses, I feel is absolutely right. And I shall be assessing this in my own eyes as not having any 106 monies attached to this 9 houses we're discussing and debating this afternoon. So I hope that clears it up for everybody. I don't want to go into it any further. I think it's made clear by Matt. Thank you, Matt. Ian for asking the question, and me for clarifying it for everybody in simple terms. So thank you for that. So we'll move on. There's still questions to officers, strangely enough. It's 3 or 4, 5, 6, 7, 8 minutes ago, but we're still questions to officers. Anybody got any? No, I'm going to close it now. So members, let's invite you to debate the item in respect to the material considerations relevant to the application. If you'd like to speak, raise your hand so we're in debate quickly. Councillor Benny, thank you.
Yeah, Mr. Chairman. Since we clarified that previous point, I think we've got a policy compliant application in front of us today. We've got a large agenda, and truly I think officers have got this one absolutely right. I see no great debate to decide where the wheelie bins go or anything else, which we have had time to time. Truly, unless anybody else has got anything pressing that needs doing, I think we should move to a vote on this one.
Yeah, I've just got something to say just before. I'm really pleased that officers and other members of other have seen we've got a good a contamination report here. I think it is, as I used to collect the scrap from there 40 years ago when it was a different business, and the environmental approach 40 years ago like it wasn't like it is today. So I think it's absolutely super. I think it's a really good report. It's got to have everything that goes with it, which absolutely it should do. I feel the construction management plan is good. I think it covers over everything that I would like to see in this report. So I'm like Councillor Benny, I'm going to make that comment that I can support this policy compliant. That's me finished. Thank you. Anybody got any more questions? No? Oh, no? Okay, so have you got anything else to say, officers? Okay, so do I have a proposer then to go with officer recommendation to grant this planning permission? I'll take Councillor French, you want to propose it. Councillor Miffin's going to second it. So we've got a recommendation that we go again with officers to approve this application. Councillor French Propose it. Councillor Mifflin second. Can I have a show of hands for the record?
It's a unanimous decision, Chairman.
Thank you very much. That application has been approved then. Let's get Councillor Marks back. Hold on for a second while Stephen fetches Councillor Marks. We need to be all present. Thank you very much. Councillor Marks has rejoined the committee. So without further ado, I'll hand over to Danielle Brooke to present agenda item number 5, FYR 26 stroke 0806. It's a PIP application, so that's a planning in principle application. Thank you.
Thank you, Chair. Agenda item 5 seeks permission in principle for the erection of 9 dwellings. Members may recall that this application was originally heard in January 2026. The original application was recommended for refusal on several grounds, including development in an elsewhere location with no justification, contrary to policies LP3 and LP12, adverse impact on the character and appearance of the countryside, contrary to LP12 and LP16, no flood risk sequential tests submitted, contrary to LP14, impact on the ooze washes, contrary to LP16 and LP19. No substantive assessment of impact on peat soils, contrary to LP14. And inefficient use of the land and unsustainable development, contrary to paragraph 8 of the NPPF. Notwithstanding, members resolved to defer determination of the application previously to enable the applicant to fully address the reasons for refusal, particularly with regard to the likely ecological impacts on soils. So just as a refresher, the application site is edged in red on the location plan and aerial photo. Mainly is classed as a growth village where development and new service position either within the existing urban area or as a small village extension will be appropriate. However, as you can see, the application site is located outside of the built form of the settlement of Mainey on the southern side of Fallow Corner Drove. The built form of the settlement extends along the northern side of the Drove. However, the south clearly is largely undeveloped. Thus, whilst the site is in close proximity to the settlement of Mainey, the site being located in open countryside on the southern side of Fallow Corner Drove is considered an elsewhere location. Thus, the updated application does not address the reason for refusal, as the application is not supported by any justification of need for development within an elsewhere location. So some photos. The transition from countryside to village is clearly marked by the current built form that runs along Fallow Corner Drove, with sporadic development beyond the site to the north and west, and significant areas of open agricultural land of which the site is part can clearly be seen here. The site is an undeveloped area of agricultural land outside the developed footprint and would not respect, development on this land would not respect the rural character or settlement pattern of the village. It would result in an unacceptable urbanisation for the precedent of future development, further eroding the open character of this area. Therefore, the revised application does not address the original reason for refusal in respect of character and appearance. The site and the surrounding area is located in flood zone 3 and is therefore at high probability of fluvial and or tidal flooding. Policy LP12 Part A requires that the development must not place people or property at unacceptable risk. In addition, Policy LP14 and Chapter 14 of the NPPF seek to direct development to areas of lower probabilities of flooding. The updated application does not seek to address this reason for refusal, and on this basis, the proposal remains unacceptable in flood risk terms. The application site is approximately 1.7 kilometres from the Ouse Washes SSSI. Furthermore, Natural England's high-level indicative mapping shows that the application site is located in an area of potential deep peat, and at the time, a reason for refusal was given in these aspects. In response to the above, the applicant subsequently provided an ecological impact assessment and peat survey to address these reasons for refusal. After consultation with the Ecology Officer and Natural England, it's concluded that further to mitigation to be secured at the technical detail stage, the scheme could be considered acceptable, and therefore the relevant reasons for refusal here can be removed. So, as I said, by virtue of the additional evidence submitted with regard to the impact on the ooze washes and peat soils, these reasons for refusal have been addressed and therefore can be imposed by condition at the technical detail stage. However, the proposed development remains unacceptable in principle, being outside the established settlement. The site is still within flood zone 3 and does not seek to address development into lower areas of flooding. The scale of development proposed is not considered to represent an effective or appropriate use of the site, and therefore fails to satisfy the PIP requirement relating to the amount of development. The application does not meet the policy and guidance test necessary to justify the grant of permission in principle, and the conflicts with the local and national policy remain unresolved, and therefore the remaining reasons for refusal are robust and should be held in full. The application is recommended, therefore, for refusal. Thank you.
Yeah, thank you very much, Danielle. We have one speaker on this application. I'd now like to ask Matthew Hall. Of course, we all know he's the agent, makes regular appearances here, to make his presentation to the committee. You've got 5 minutes. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman, members. So when this application was heard at January's committee, it had 6 reasons for refusal. As Danielle has said, now that's been reduced to 4. Since this time, as we've heard, the applicant submitted an ecology report and a peat survey, and both Natural England and FDC Ecology now raise no objection. This site has been in ownership of the applicants for 50 years. Some of the comments in the report, just to address some of those, along this section of Fallow Corner Drove, particularly as well as if you head to the east, there is no main sewer. So this development, if approved, would not be on the main sewer. We've shown large plots, so there'd be adequate room for treatment plants or sealed cesspools, so we wouldn't be going in to the main sewer. Members will also remember at last month's planning committee, to the east of this site, an application was approved that was subject to an earlier PIP along this same road, and also to the west of this site there was a further dwelling approved there, and also directly opposite this site where they're developing the mill, there was an application came forward in the last 18 months that was also approved nearly opposite this site. Anglian Water and the Environment Agency don't raise any objections. Where we are here, obviously when members have visited site, floor levels will be raised above the ground as per the Environment Agency requirements, and directly opposite this site at the mill, where a development was approved by this committee in the last 18 months, they've had to raise their floor levels above the actual ground, so we would be doing the same. That's more or less opposite this site. Highways haven't objected to this application, and the applicants, including their dad, are all on the drainage board, so they're fully aware of their responsibilities with regards to obviously middle level. Looking in the report, yes, these are large plots. We have shown up to 9. These are large plots, but I can think of other areas in Maney, particularly where you come into Maney, which is also in a flood zone, Station Road. There are about 14 odd plots past there, real large properties, large gardens. They're all full. Some people want a large garden, some people don't, but that's why we've shown those. I think one of the key points with the application, policy LP3, mainly is a growth village as we know, but in that policy of the local plan it states, LP3 states for growth villages mainly, small village extensions will be appropriate. And when you look at that map, my opinion, I'd consider that a small village extension. There's no definition in the policy, large, medium, small. This is a small village extension. And when you look here, development on that side of Fallow Corner Drove is all linear development, which is what we're proposing. We are bot development. But also when you look on the map that it doesn't show, further to the east, there is a farmyard, large farmyard that's been established there 30, 40 years, probably even longer. And there's also a further residential dwelling on this side of the road, which isn't shown on the photo, but also between this site and the farmyard, there's a dog exercise area, which is also owned by these applicants. Small village extension, policy LP3, that's what we're applying for. Thank you.
Yeah, thank you, Mr. Hall. Members, clarifications to Mr. Hall. Councillor Marks, thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Hall. Obviously, I know this really well, living in Maney. Village extension, I'm correct, this does butt up to the old mill that stands derelict at the present time.
Yes.
Okay, and that mill is quite a height. Now, we have discussion here regarding height and size of dwelling. Obviously, if this was to be raised for flood zone, to come out of the flood zone, as we've had previous properties, certainly to the left and the right, what height do you think, in comparison with the mill, would that be? Same height, higher, lower?
So we've raised floor levels above here, and if they're two-storey, let's say large two-storey properties, we would not be higher than that mill. Definitely we would not be higher than that mill. That's a very high building. Even if we raise floor levels here, which we'd have to, would we be higher than that brick building, the mill next to us? No.
So in theory, it would, because we've had the height game before when we played it in Wimbledon, it would not look, the height would not look out of character against the mill or any other properties around there.
In my opinion, no, we wouldn't be higher than the mill. Two-storey, 2.5-storey property. And when you look along Fallow, as you'll know, look along Fallow Corner, particularly going to the east, a lot of them there have had their floor levels raised, and a lot of those there is a large two-storey property, some 2.5-storey, and even the one on this side of the road to the east, that was raised out of the ground, from my memory, 1.6, 1.8 metres. But you drive along there now, you don't notice it. It's landscaped, etc., etc. So will we be, going back to your original question, will we be higher than the mill? No.
Thank you.
Right. Anybody else at all? Yeah, thank you for asking that pertinent question, Councillor Marks. No, thank you very much. You got away with that lightly today. Thank you. Members, questions, clarifications to officers? No, can't see anything, so move on swiftly. I'd now like to invite members to debate the item in respect to the material considerations and ask officers any questions relevant to the application. If you'd like to speak, raise your hand, and we're in debate after all that. Anybody else want to kick this off? Councillor Marks, thank you.
Thank you. As I previously said, this is my ward. I know this area really well. We've been here last month, as the agent has said, a bit further down the road, flood zone. I believe some of it was in flood zone 3. We have had both at the T-junction of Fallow Drove and Westfield Road, a property there that was built in a flood zone, which we've raised out of the ground. Now it just blends into the rest. And then the opposite end, as you go towards Short Drive, you've got our property there, which is the farmhouse, which I understand also has been built out of the flood zone as well. Yes, there may be a bit of an issue. Is 9 properties suitable for this piece of land? You know, is it good land usage? We need all types of properties across the road. We've got 2- and 3-bedroom bungalows. So, you know, why shouldn't we have houses on that? Is it outside, or is it an elsewhere location? Probably in training of what we've been given recently, yeah, you may class it as that. I believe, though, it butts up against not only the mill, but if you look to the left-hand side, there's 3, if not 4 houses now under construction as well. You probably saw that if you went out and did site surveys. Further along, you've got the dog field. I don't see that ever being built on. I think this brings an end to building along that line of, and it's certainly not going to be behind there, anything going to be built behind there either. I think on this occasion, having heard when we first had this in January, where there was concern over Swan's Landing and the peat, we sound as though we've got over that. I'm here to support this application. Yes, it's 9 houses. I know Maney Parish Council have wanted sort of 106 money for this number of properties. I don't know how that's been resolved, but you know, if I'm sure if it was 9 houses and that was policy, then or 10 houses, you know, they would be paying the contractor or the owner would be paying the money. Yeah, as I say, I'm fairly relaxed regarding this and would support this application.
Anybody else at all? Councillor Benny, thank you.
Yeah, I need to concur with Councillor Marks. Myself and Councillor French had a ride out on Sunday and had a look at it. If you look at Fallow Corner Drove, on this side of the road at the top where it joins Westfield Road, there's 2 properties that have been built here, out and lived in, and I think there's 2, maybe 4 being built in there this far out the ground. I think farmhouse was Brian Hawes's that was at the bottom, that was built up 1.6 metres. I mean, that was approved, and as Councillor Mark says, that just sits there and that looks like it's always been there. Yeah, if we hadn't had the ones the other side of the road, then maybe. But when we looked at the flood map that was up on here a few minutes ago, the flood area extends to the other side of the road on there, and they've got houses built in there. I personally don't see anything wrong with this, and I didn't back in January.
Yeah, thank you very much. I think I've got a steer where this is going. Councillor Marks, you get a second bite.
If I could just come back on a couple of points also, which the road itself, a lot of the road has now been upgraded via the mill application. So as you work along there, yes, the road is not great in places, but I believe highways are looking at doing some rework along there as well, which I think is going to sort of like help certainly these properties as well. As I say, you know, where else do we go with this?
We go, don't we? We go the other side of the road, as you intimated. There's 2 or 3 bedroom bungalows, and there's 9 big houses proposed on this plot, if it gets passed, of course. Some people want big houses, some people want small houses, some people want 1 bedroom bungalows, some people want 5 houses, 5 bedroom houses. And this, in Maney, opposite there, provides, in my opinion, a good mix. So I again will concur with Councillor Marks and Benny's comments, and I shall be supporting this application. But I'll bring Councillor Marks in once again.
Sorry, one thing I should say, Maney Parish Council have been very clear regarding connection to the sewers. We are struggling in Maney regarding the sewage works. We've had numerous incidents now where we've had tankering 24 hours a day, 7 days a week. Maney Parish Council have said that, you know, they don't want anything else connected onto the sewer line. This, with their own treatment plants like we have in Charmont Drive, the other end of the village, we're not putting more stress onto the sewage works. Anglian Water are saying 2027, 2028. That's to be believed and to be seen when it happens. So as I say, you know, again, this is not putting strain on the village. So
yeah, I think Mr. Hall in his presentation did allude to that they each going to have a treatment plant, a single treatment plant to their properties. So again, as you say, Councillor Marks, it's going to not put any strain on Anglian Water treatment plants. And again, you know, so that nullifies that thoughts of Maney Parish Council anyway. So again, you know, I reiterate that I shall be supporting this application, but it's still open for debate, and anybody else can join in if they wish to. Again, Councillor Mark.
So I think from memory as well, I mean, one thing certainly Councillor Gerstner would always pick up on is, are we losing good farmland? From memory, from January's presentation, I think we saw the yield of the combine years gone by, so we could actually see what that field was actually producing, and it certainly in that top area was not producing the yield further down the field as well. So, you know, the argument could be, are we losing good farm soil? Probably it's just moderate.
Said, you alluded to Councillor Gerson, it's not unfortunately not with us today. He also maintains local members know their area best. So he also maintains that, I'm sure he wouldn't mind me saying that, but we are where we are. So I think I can nearly bring this to a close, the debate. In fact, I will. Officers, have you got anything to say on the matter? I'm sure you will have. Thank you.
The officer's report covers details in quite clearly, obviously. It's then revisited as part of the addendum or the updated one. And obviously, there's, you know, hear members' views, and it's comforting to hear the point on elsewhere location. Maybe some things I have said have. I've been here 2.5 years, so it's about time one thing has, which is always good. But yeah, I don't think really otherwise officers have got anything to say.
Okay. Further ado, do I have a proposal to go with officer recommendation to refuse planning permission? So I'm looking for a proposer to go against officers. To go with officers. I got mixed up there myself. So have we got a proposal to go with officers' recommendation to refuse this application? Sorry. Can't see one, so I'm looking for a different proposal. Councillor Marks, what are you proposing and the reasons for going against officer recommendation, if that's indeed what you're going to do?
Okay, I propose we go against officer's recommendation. We had 6 points, 2 of which I believe have already been covered as addressed. I hear what the head of planning is saying, and I think he's quite happy that we probably have taken on board via all the training that, yeah, I would agree this is an elsewhere location. However, I feel that it's actually abutting already a line of properties that are being built, plus a mill, which I believe will come in for conversion any time as well. So although the clarification may be it's an elsewhere location, it is within the village form, I believe, certainly with what's across the roads as well, which we've given. We have to be consistent regarding being in the flood zone. Last month we sat here and passed, I think it was 5 or 6 further down Fallow Drove that were in flood zone 3, so I think we need to be consistent on the flood zones as well. We've already heard that mitigation can be put in place because the planners have already mentioned regarding the height of the property being raised, which again doesn't seem to be in conflict because we've also already got the mill, which will be taller.
Substantial harm. That's probably the reason the saying perhaps we need to use there. But yes, so I'm happy with that. Have we got a second for Councillor Marx's proposal? I'm happy to second it. So yeah. You didn't put your hand up quick enough, Councillor Benny. Never mind. I'm sure you'll be recompensed another time. So anyway, without further ado, we've got a proposal to go against officer recommendation to approve this application. Obviously, it's a pit, so there's no conditions needed. Councillor Marks has proposed it. I, as chair, will second it. Can I have a show of hands on that?
It's a unanimous decision, Chair.
So that application has been approved. Now I'd like to hand over to Hayley Parker Haynes, the principal development hero in Fenland, here to present agenda application 6 F/YR 250856. It's a variation of conditions application. So over to you, Hayley, when you're ready. Thank you.
Thank you, Chairman. This application seeks to vary Condition 7 of planning permission allowed at appeal for the erection of 47 dwellings at land east of Bevil's Close and north of Eastmoor Lane. This is to allow for the commencement of a limited part of the approved development prior to the completion of the archaeological investigation required by the approved written scheme of investigation. This is the site location plan and aerial photograph. This is the plan showing the details of the secondary access point as approved under the appeal to which works are proposed to commence. The drawing on the right-hand side of the screen shows the extent of the works proposed, highlighted in yellow. This is part of the approved site plan for context, and some photos and Google images to show the wider access arrangement at this point. The proposed works are confined solely to the approved secondary access point and are located within an area already disturbed by the construction of existing residential development. No works are proposed within the main development parcel whereby archaeological investigations are still required to take place. All archaeological obligations would remain in place and must be completed before the remainder of the development proceeds. Cambridgeshire County Council Archaeology have raised no concerns regarding the variation, and the application is therefore recommended for approval. Thank you.
That's short and sweet. We have no speakers on this application at all, so I'm going to invite members on this occasion to ask questions, clarifications to officers. Have them. So, they're looking now to do some work, and they haven't finished their archaeological digs and whatever they need to do. If we allow this to go through, who's going to take ownership of making them do what they should be doing? Because we know developers and of the like, and no such names are going to be mentioned, do tend to cut corners, and especially if there is nobody to look and make sure that they're doing the job properly. So that's the question.
The condition's been amended so that it will be dealt with by condition that they still have to carry out the archaeology works in accordance with the written scheme of investigation that's been approved. So this literally amends it so that works to the secondary access point as shown in yellow, when we get there, can be undertaken. It's, as that's an existing residential area, the ground's already been disturbed. So it's just been amended so that they can commence their development and implement their permission, and then they'll carry out additional archaeological works as required through their approved written scheme of investigation for the rest of the site. So it's still dealt with by a condition.
So who's going to? So yeah, I suppose that's quite correct on paper. So is our Cambs County Council Archaeology team, are they going to go down there and have a look and see? Are they going to make sure that they're doing this properly?
Through you, Chair. In terms of this variation to the condition, it would be ourselves, Fenland District Council, as local plan authority, which would have enforcement powers to enforce against the developer should they not comply with the requirements of the condition. But as you mentioned, the requirements for the condition is from Cambridgeshire County Council Archaeology. So if there was a breach, we would work in conjunction with them to investigate. But obviously the purpose of the condition is to approve the and work to the written scheme of investigation. Should the developer not follow that approved written scheme of investigation, we could then step in. Yeah, so it would be us as a local planning authority who would have enforcement powers. But as with all these conditions, we would hope that it never gets to that point. But obviously, we can work with our colleagues in the county where any of the work's not to be carried out in accordance with what's been approved.
Okay. That gives me a little bit of comfort. Any more questions to officers at all on this? No? Okay. So, members, we're going to debate this application with material planning considerations for doing so. We're open for debate, so who's going to kick this off? Councillor Benny, sorry.
Sorry, Mr. Chairman, you look deep in thought there. I mean, truly, this is a variation of condition. We don't want to be holding the delivery of homes up. I think that we've had the archaeological aspect of this covered by the explanation from the officers. Again, I see nothing wrong with this at all. I think it's just a variation of condition, which is a standard planning matter.
Yeah, you're right. I'm really disappointed we've got this far, really, and I'm going to just go back. This application it was refused by FDC Planning Committee some years ago. It went to appeal. The inspectorate overturned our decision, and really, for the life of me, I can't see how on earth whatever he saw, because the application site. I'm just going to go on, and then I shall finish. It's absolutely hard to get to, past the grade 1 or grade 2 listed church, through wiggledy-piggledy streets and that, which is going to be an awful job for Arctics and sort of ambulances to pass and all that. So goodness knows, I'm not being disrespectful to the inspector, but this should probably never ever been built in the first place. But we are where we are, and I can see Councillor Benny's with his train of thoughts, and we are where we are. So, unfortunately, I shall have to recommend this for approval as well. So, anybody else at all? No, the debate is quickly over. Have you got anything to say? No. So basically, I'm looking for a proposal to go with officer's recommendation to approve this variation of conditions. Councillor French is going to propose it. Councillor Mifflin is going to second it. So we've got a proposal. Councillor French proposing, Councillor Mifflin second. Can I have a show of hands on that variation of conditions?
That's a unanimous decision, Chair.
Yeah, thank you very much. That application. We'll go now hand over to Kimberly Crowe, Development Officer, to present agenda item number 7, F/YR 260269F. So Kimberly, when you're ready, thank you.
Thank you, Chair. So agenda item 7 is a full application for the erection of one self-build, custom-built dwelling at land east of 1 Doddington Road in Wimbledon. So the application site is edged in red on both the location plan and aerial photo. The site is proposed to be accessed from the existing access serving Bell Gardens, and Bell Gardens is characterised by single-storey dwellings. The proposed site plan is shown on the screen. The dwelling would be served by 2 parking spaces with private amenity space to the rear. The application includes the removal of small trees to the front of the site, however the tree line to the north is to be retained. So the proposed elevations are shown on screen. The design of the dwelling reflects the prevailing character along Bell Gardens. And floor plans for completeness. And a street scene as well. Some site photos on screen. So the top left photo shows the existing access road into Bell Gardens with the existing bungalows on the right. And then the top right and bottom photo show the existing fencing and trees that will be removed to facilitate the proposal. So this application is considered acceptable in terms of character, appearance, residential amenity, access, parking, flood risk, drainage, trees and ecology. We have had objections from Wimbledon Parish Council and some neighbouring residents along Bell Gardens. Several of those objections relate to issues such as land ownership, restrictive covenants on deeds and maintenance of the existing drive, which are not material planning considerations and cannot be used to justify a refusal of this application. So the application is considered to comply with the relevant policies of the local plan, and the recommendation is to grant subject to the completion of a legal agreement to secure the self-build custom nature of the development.
Right. Yep. Thank you, Kimberly. We have one speaker on this application, and I'd like to invite Matthew Hall, who is the agent, to make his presentation to the committee. You've got 5 minutes when you're ready to start, Mr. Hall. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman, members. So the applicant has resided at this site for 14 years, and as we've heard, the proposal is for a bungalow, which will match in with the rest of the bungalows, so there'll be no overlooking. Looking at some of the comments in the report from the parish council, and I've discussed this fairly at length really with the applicant about the flooding one, and he's confirmed to me that in the 14 years that he's resided at this property, his garden has never ever flooded, despite what it says in the report. It's never ever flooded. He said the flooding incident actually occurred at 7 Addison Road, probably 2 to 3 years ago, not in the last 12 months. And in his statement, he's saying this was resolved when works were carried out at the junction of Addison Road, Blue Lane and Doddington Road by highways. There was 4-way traffic lights at the junction, which I remember those. And the site's all in flood zone 1. The applicants own the site and the host property, so there would be various options here for deliveries, and when people are building the actual bungalow, loads would be restricted, but we're happy to provide a construction phase plan which should give residents some comfort. There's queries here about the bin lorry, and there were queries during the application about the bin lorry. When that estate was built years ago, there should have been a bin collection point at the front, but it was never put in, and they didn't own the land. But this application, by this applicant, he owns the land, so we are going to put a bin collection point in, which would serve the whole estate and keep the driveway clear. And the applicant has confirmed to me in an email that he would contribute to maintenance costs of the road. There's no technical objections to this application. It's supported by highways, ecology, environmental health. The applicant is happy to enter into a legal agreement with regards to self-build declaration, which I think we offered during the application. The report, in my opinion, by the planning officer, Kim Crow, is very thorough, covers everything, and it's recommended for approval. Thank you.
Yeah, thank you, Mr. Hall. Short and sweet. Thank you very much. Members, questions, clarifications to Mr. Hall? No? Okay. Thank you very much, Mr. Hall. Members, clarifications to officers? No? I'm stopping that then. Thank you. Now, so I'd like to invite members, members to debate the item in respect to material considerations and ask officers any questions relevant to the application. If you'd like to speak, raise your hand and we're in debate very quickly. So who wants to kick the debate off? Well, oh, you are. Okay. Councillor French, I was going to, but you can.
I would say, Mr. Jim, really, it's a single self-build. There really isn't much to debate.
Kate, that you want to speak, Councillor Benny? No, I concur. No, I concur what Councillor French has said, and I shall be supporting this item. So we are where we are. So I'll just clear my throat. Anybody else speak who wants to? Thank you, Joe, very much. Anybody else want to speak on this in debate? Hope this has got a gin in it. So anybody else want to speak on this debate? No, so I'm going to close the debate now. Officers, have you got anything to say? No, you haven't got. I have a proposer to go with officer's recommendation to grant planning permission to grant, to be absolutely clear, Councillor Purser. So we've got, who's the second? Councillor Miffordin. So we've got a proposal to go with officer's recommendation to grant planning permission for this. Councillor Purser's going to propose it. Councillor Miffordin's going to second it. Can I have a show of hands on that proposal, please?
Unanimous decision,
That application has been approved. So are we all right? Do we want 5 minutes or shall we carry on? Crack on. That's good enough. That's the word. Sorry. Yeah. Okay. Sorry about that. We're just gonna have 5 minutes then.
Yeah.
That will allow Councillor Purser to leave the building
And the officer to get here.
and the officers to catch breath. Thank you, members, for being back promptly. Thank you, officers, as well. I'll now hand over to David Grant, Senior Development Officer here at Fenland, to present agenda number 8, F/YR 24/08790. So whenever you're ready, David, thank you.
Thank you, Chairman. This application seeks outline planning permission with all matters reserved for the erection of up to one self-build dwelling at Honeybank, Second Drove, Swingbrow, outside the development footprint of Chatteris. This application was considered by the Planning Committee on the 5th of February 2025. At that meeting, members resolved to grant planning permission contrary to officer recommendation. Slide 2 shows the location plan and aerial photograph. The application site is located outside the development footprint of Chatteris to the north of 40-foot bank and 40-foot drain. The application site is located in what is identified as an elsewhere location under the Fenland local plan, where residential development is generally restricted. There are a small number of dwellings in the vicinity of the site, and the surrounding area is characterised by its open agricultural nature with some sporadic development. The application site and surrounding area lies entirely within Environment Agency Flood Zone 3. The officer recommendation of refusal identifies flood risk in the absence of a substantive and evidence sequential test as one of the reasons for refusal. Slide 3 shows the distance to the built-up settlement. By road, the separation distance is 1.6 kilometres from the western edge of Chatteris. Site 4 shows the site photos. Photo 1 is a view looking north over the site. Photo 2 shows the view looking south up towards 40-foot bank. Kindly note the difference in topography from the application site and the highway above. Photo 3 shows a concrete pad that has been installed on site following submission of the application, and photo 4 shows a package treatment plant that has also been installed on site. This application seeks outline planning permission with all matters reserved to erect up to one self-build dwelling on garden land at Honeybank, Second Grove, Swingbrow. The application site constitutes an area of land outside the development footprint of Chatteris. Development of this site would result in unacceptable urbanisation, extending development into the countryside. It would likely set a precedent for future development and further erode the character of the area and open countryside. The development proposal will be in an elsewhere location, contrary to policies LP3 and LP12 of the Fenland local plan, and as such, any residential development on this site will be contrary to the above policy considerations, and thus the outline application fails. Policy LP14 of the local plan requires development in flood zone 3 to undergo a sequential test to demonstrate that development cannot be delivered elsewhere in areas of lower risk of flooding. Policy LP2 seeks to deliver high quality environments, ensuring that people are not put at identified risks from development, thereby avoiding adverse impacts in the interests of health and well-being. The site lies within flood zone 3, which is a high risk flood area. The applicant has failed to undertake a substantive and evidence sequential test and has therefore failed to demonstrate that development could not be delivered in an area of lower flood risk. Consequently, the proposal fails to satisfy policies LP14 and LP2 of the Fenland local plan. And additionally, policy LP15 requires all development with transport implications to identify deliverable mitigation measures and secure arrangement for their implementation in order to make the development acceptable in transport terms. The proposed development, albeit in its outline form, includes the existing vehicular access along the site frontage. This access would need to be realigned and widened with visibility displays provided at 2.4 metres by 215 metres in order for the development to be acceptable and not cause severe harm to the highway. As such, the proposal fails to satisfy policy LP15 of the Fenland local plan. For the many reasons given above, the recommendation is one of refusal.
Thank you very much. Under the current scheme of delegation, there are no speakers allowed to have an input into this application. So we'll go straight away and to officers. So questions, members, to officers.
Thank you, Chairman. I mean, this is Chatteris. This is not my ward. It's the north of Chatteris, not the south, which is my ward. When this came to the committee before, I supported this application. My view has not changed. This is a PE16 postcode, which is part of Chatteris. This is part of Chatteris. The people who live there, I know a lot of people who live there, and they're Chatteris people in the main. In terms of flood risk, well, we just passed one at Maney, and as Councillor Mark says, that principle has already been said, and we are to be consistent, and I think we should be consistent today. We approved this before. The head of planning said that he wanted a sequential test. A sequential test has been submitted. It may not be what the officers require, but it has been submitted, and they probably want it done over a district wide. And I say no, this is part of Chatteris. And truly, I supported this last time, and I will be supporting this time.
Okay. Thank you for those pertinent questions. Did you want to speak, Councillor Marks? Thank you.
Thank you, Chair. Yeah, I mean, we sat here X number of months ago discussing this. I think we actually discussed it for a fairly long period of time. The is it Chatteris, isn't it Chatteris? Officers say it's 1.6 kilometres. Well, that's actually under a mile from. I'm taking it. Where do you take your measurement from?
From the entrance to the site to the final dwelling at the north of the terrace houses that's currently under construction. So it's at the north of the highway there.
Okay, so but from there is at least 1, 2, 3 more properties before you get to the bridge. One being a farm, one being a gentleman who does horse box repairs, and there's new build as well been put up there. And I think we've passed since then 5, if not 4, if not 5 building plots along there since as well. So I mean, as I say, it's within a mile. So I still believe it's Chatteris. Yeah, it's the outlying area of Chatteris, but we have the same when you go along to the Meeple Road. We had the dog field, which was also Chatteris, but actually that's well over a mile really from anywhere sort of built up. So I don't see any issue with that. Regarding flooding in the area, you've got the 40-foot bank, which is there to protect and hold away water. So if that bursts, everybody's going to get flooded. It's not just that. And we've of course got the dreaded reservoir arriving any time as well, which again is going to cause issues. But we do have, in our defence, the IDBs who do a great job with the pumping of the waters, especially along there as well, and also out to sea. So you know, if that's going to flood, most of the area is going to flood. And regarding splay vision here, as we can see there, when you pull out onto that road, I've actually been in a lorry further down picking sugar beets up. You can see a good distance from that junction alone, where you come out onto that road. You can see at least a quarter of a mile up the road to the bridge on one way, and at least half a mile the other way. And it's a 50-mile-an-hour road, which has got speed cameras on it as well. So I'm sorry, I will still be supporting this application.
Yeah, I mean, Councillor Benny again. Thank you.
Yeah, I mean, Councillor Marks picked up on the road. I mean, I've lived in Chatteris all my life, and this did have an accident black spot, but there were very, very unusual circumstances with some of the people that died there. Speed was the big thing. I can think of 2 really nasty crashes down there, but that was caused by speed. And since we've had the speed cameras down there, I can't think of an accident along there. I mean, I travel that road regularly, and all the other properties that pull out onto the same road with the same visibility display have done so quite safely, and I don't think that this will affect that. It's harder actually coming out of the main road onto Swing Road because there's bushes and trees hiding that when you come along. So with this one, I think this is, personally, I think it's safe for that, and I think that the visibility display is plenty for that.
Councillor Marks?
I think just coming back on 2 points of that, unfortunately, I lost a very good friend at the T-junction by the bridge about 30 years ago. He was pulling out. That is a real bad junction there. I don't see this as a bad junction. And equally, the state of that road at the present time, you're lucky if you can do 50 mile an hour down it, even with what the council's already done for repairs. At the end of the day, if the highways feel that is bad, when we've seen other applications where, especially on the 142, where they were going to let people out onto a red route, 60 mile an hour with a speed camera a quarter of a mile down the road, I think they need to start rethinking their strategy and what they come up with.
Okay, Councillor Benny again.
I mean, talking about the 40-foot bank, we've had traffic loads on there for a year, and we had, the road was closed for years. Cambs County Council seem to have forgotten Chatteris. They've certainly forgotten to go and finish the roadworks off. It's supposed to be barrier, and this has been going on over a year, and they haven't even fixed it. It's a nightmare of a road to go down. You can't drive down there fast because, truthfully, it's sinking into the fen. It would be good if Cambs County Council actually finished the job they started 12 months ago.
Yeah, I totally agree. I mean, it's 50 mile an hour speed limit cameras, as you quite rightly say. It's more like a 30 mile an hour road with the state of the road. So I can only reiterate what you say, what Councillor Benny and Councillor Marks has said. This to me is just I agree with it the first time out, and I can't see any reason at all. Only probably to reinforce my view that it should be passed. So, anybody else? It's still in debate. Anybody else? I can get steer probably where it's going, but I will take anybody else if they want to say anything. They don't, so I'm closing the debate. Members, officers, anything you'd like to say? No? Okay. So, do I have a proposer to go with officer's recommendation to refuse planning permission? To refuse, to be clear. No. So, when I've moved my biscuit, I'm looking for another proposal. Councillor Benny, what are you proposing and the reasons for doing so, please?
I'd like to propose we go against officer's recommendation and once again approve this application. It's getting a bit like a football match if you play it after another field win, won't you? My reasons are the road, I feel, is safe. There have been no accidents along there that I've looked. I did have a look and I couldn't see any accidents along there. There are at the top, I agree. A friend of mine 50 years ago died on that junction. It is a bad one. LP14, we've got houses here. We approved this last time with the same amount of risk and more debate than we've had today. We've already looked at Maney today, and consistency is something we should be looking for, and we should be consistent in this as the previous application. It would be unfair on the applicants to treat one person one way and another the other. As to elsewhere location, this is part of Chatteris, it's PE16 postcode, and I voted for this last time, and there is nothing that makes me want to change my mind on this from the time before.
Okay, Councillor Benny, I'm happy with all you said, and I don't think it needs adding to. All we need is a seconder. I'll take Councillor Marks this time. He's had quite a bit to say on the situation, so I'll take him as a seconder. So we've got a proposal to go with officer recommendation to approve this application. Councillor Benny is proposing it. Councillor Marks is going to second it. Can I have a show of hands on that?
It's a unanimous decision, Chairman.
The application has been approved. Yes, Councillor.
Last month, Councillor Marks asked for the decision notice to be issued quickly on that, and it was. Thank you very much, officers, for that. Could we ask for the same for this, that the decision notice is issued promptly, please?
I'm looking to my left, and hopefully.
Through you, Chairman, I say decision notices aren't held back in any way. What I'd say, obviously, this is an outline application, isn't it? So there will be conditions. The reason PIPs are so easy and quick to issue is because there's no need to draft conditions, no need to have senior management checks, making sure. So obviously, there's obviously a lot of different levels of work between a PIP and a. So it won't be going out as quickly as the PIPs went out last month because of just ability to deliver that.
I didn't say as quickly as them. I said promptly. Thank you very much. I'll leave it with you.
So with that, there'll be certain conditions added to that. So to be fair, I would like to be included in having a look at the conditions to make sure. I'm sure they won't be too onerous. I've only ever seen one too onerous, and that was easily put right. So thank you, officers, for that. Councillor Marks.
Sorry, just going back, but all I would say is, could I please see the decision notice for the one for Maney that fellow drove, please? Because hopefully, as you say, that was a PIP, so that should be out pretty quickly.
Yeah, I mean, I think officers have got a steer that we want to see these decision notes out as soon as possible. So thank you very much for that, officer.
Thank you, Chairman. So this is an application for full planning permission for the erection of one self-built dwelling and change of use of land to create a new builder's yard. The proposal also includes the erection of a shed, a 2.4 metre palisade fence and gates, the siting of 6 containers and the formation of an access. This application was previously heard by the committee at the meetings of October 2025 and March 2026. Where a resolution to grant planning permission was made contrary to officer recommendation. However, the application is brought back before members today for further consideration on specific issues relating to the scheme. By way of a quick reminder to the committee, the site is located on Crossgrove, approximately 1.4 kilometres west of the settlement of March, in an open countryside location, with March Airfield located immediately opposite the site to the west, with the remainder of the surrounding area generally characterised by undeveloped agricultural fields. The proposed development is set back from the public highway, with the residential element located in the northern part of the site and the builder's yard and ancillary development for this located in the southern part of the site. The proposed dwelling shows a detached 4-bedroom property, and elevations of the storage shed proposed for use in conjunction with the builder's yard and a section of the proposed palisade fencing. Proposed street scene drawings show that all of the proposed structures will have some visibility from the public vantage points along Crossgrove. And this shows the relationship of the site to the airfield adjacent to the west. So this was an image previously shown to members illustrating the relationship between the application site and operations at the airfield, with the green lines along the bottom indicating takeoff and landing directions passing directly over the application site, and the blue line showing the 500-foot protected airspace around the airfield in accordance with Civil Aviation Authority laws. Site photos show the currently undeveloped greenfield nature of the site and relationship with the airfield opposite. So as already referenced, the application was previously considered by the committee in October 2025 and March 2026, where a resolution to grant permission was made. The application is brought back before committee following receipt of legal counsel, and the members of committee are invited to give further consideration as to whether the site constitutes an elsewhere location as set out in policy LP3, and to give further consideration as to the flood risk associated with the development due to the location of the site within flood zone 3, and whether the proposal passes the sequential and exception test. The recommendation of officers remains that the site constitutes an elsewhere location without sufficient justification that there is an essential need for the development. Further, the application is not supported by a robust or evident sequential test or information to demonstrate compliance with the exception test. Accordingly, it is not considered that there are any material considerations that outweigh the identified harm in this regard. Therefore, remains recommended that the application is refused in this instance. Thank you.
Yes, thank you. Thank you very much for that, Tom. Again, scheme of delegation, scheme of in the Constitution does not allow for any speakers on this. As I said, just to clarify, I will be looking for a change in that scheme in the Constitution at the earliest convenience, and probably at the next council meeting in September. But as we speak at the moment, there's no speakers. So what we'll do is go straight to officers, questions to officers. Thank you. Yeah, ready?
Yeah.
Thank you.
Thank you, Chair. Officers' briefing yesterday, Chairman's briefing yesterday, I was slightly concerned. You came back and to apparently a further letter that was issued, from what I've looked online, the 11th of May 2026, where the objector has raised a number of issues. Today we sit here, but we cannot actually question the objector. When he gave evidence, or when he spoke to us previously, I have to say at times his information he has given has been more than woolly, I will say, and at times conflicted with actually what we found out since. So it was 5 weeks. Why has he not? Why are we allowing that when we can't actually make and ask any questions of the gentleman?
Over to you. Thank you.
Through you, Chairman, I think there's multi-layered points to that query, and I think to some extent that goes to the heart of how Fenland deals with planning committees. It's quite unusual for an authority to have a questioning process for members that deals with quite small minor applications. My experience and knowledge across the country of knowing of this is generally they only tie into quite large applications, and the value of somebody being here or not being here, or in principle of someone being here or not being here, shouldn't be a material consideration in the debate. And I've provided that advice before, and so has Stephen, and members have acknowledged that. Any material consideration received between receipt of the application and decision notice going out is a material consideration, and that's exactly why this one is back. Because even though the legal challenge wasn't relating to this application, the legal advice and what members considered was on all fours. So that's why this been brought, because although it wasn't about this application, it was a material consideration. Any applicant, any objector, any interested party, etc., has a right to write into the council after a decision has been, or application has been to committee. When officers draft a report, if officers look to issue a decision, if there's been a period of time since the decision, or if something has been received, we produce a delegated officer's report, and we look at what has been received, or if there's been, for example, a long period for negotiation of Section 106, whether or not there's any new material considerations. It is potential, for example, when the new NPPF comes out, that officers, depending on what that document says, officers may have to bring back every major application before the decision notice can be issued, because there could be some significant change in some advice that might not result in a different recommendation, but just being that the delegated authority that it's implied that you give to myself as head of planning falls away. The fact that something has been written in by somebody doesn't mean that we should have them back to question, because we shouldn't be looking at questioning every applicant, every objector, everybody, because that's not really what the planning system's set up for. But the officer report deals with this matter and says we have received it, but it also clarifies that, because we're only looking at 2 issues here. This is being brought back on, I think, the elsewhere and the flood risk matters solely. So the other points that have been raised broadly go hand in hand with what was raised previously, what members were aware of, what we've discussed. They're not identical, but broadly they fall into the same catchment, the same remit, and therefore that is dealt with in this point. So it's a moot point, for want of better terms. It doesn't talk to the 2 reasons that you're here. It didn't bring up anything new that we thought members needed to be aware of explicitly into debate and discuss, and therefore whether or not that letter's come in, our advice to members is that it's not relevant to the debate that's occurring right now. Obviously, with all these things, because decision notice hasn't been issued, you can go back to anything before. I would not advise you do, because obviously you'd have to come up with a new material consideration of why have you changed your opinion from where you were before, and there would need to be a new material consideration. So obviously you've read the letter online. If you think it has value and you've suddenly got concerns, you can raise them and discuss that if you want. But I wouldn't be suggesting that we should be calling people back just because they've written a letter in, so you can quiz them on it. Particularly when officers' advice is that it's not really got any. Yeah, quote Chairman, no bearing on the recommendation. Thanks, Chairman.
Okay. So I don't know if that satisfies your inquisitiveness.
May I just say, it does seem a very long time, 5 weeks. And before, as we'd already agreed, and we'd passed it as a committee, 5 weeks on, and the gentleman then writes in, you would have hoped the decision notice would have gone out within 5 weeks. I understand what you're saying, you've held it back because of legal whatever, but did it really take, how long has it been taken to get this legal advice for I think it's 4/5 applications?
Okay, so it's a really pertinent point you made. It's a good question to ask, and I think, So, there's still questions to officers, Councillor French.
Yeah, I would like to go back to what you said earlier. We've got 3 applications here today. We've looked at them before. We've been told, and it's been very confusing what we have actually been told, that people who spoke before, including agents, can't do it again. It's in the Constitution, and I do believe that we need to take this to Cabinet and Council for clarification.
I did allude to that earlier, Councillor French, and I shall be doing. I might be sending it to Cabinet, but I would definitely put in a motion before full Council, and if I'm able to speak on it, I shall be doing that and look for support from the Council as a whole, just for clarification. So, any more questions to officers at all before we start the debate? No? Okay. So, right, I'm asking members to debate the item in respect of the material considerations, and ask any questions to officers. If they'd like to speak, please raise your hand. So basically we're in debate, and Councillor Marks would like to kick it off, and thank you.
Thank you, Chair. So here we go again. I think we've been here twice with this one, but right, let's do flood zone first. Flood zone 3. We have literally just had flood zone 3 in Chatteris or Swingbow. We have just had it in Maney as well. I think it's fairly well established within this committee that although we understand regarding flood zone, we also understand there's mitigation that can be put in place as well. And at the end of the day, from what I remember of this application, the gentleman himself owns the land. This is going to be a self-build type build, or a build for his business. You can't put that in the middle of March, where it probably is in flood zone 1, flood zone 2, because nobody's going to want that in the middle of March. The likelihood is he's got plant diggers, whatever. This is what builders' yards look like. We have got a strap line in Fenland open for business. What are we doing here? Yeah, we're causing somebody, who owns some land we're saying to him, well, you shouldn't actually be building on your own land, which I think is not correct. Personally, I personally supported this application last time round, and will happily support it again this time round.
So, Betty, then I think I'll come in then.
Yeah, thank you, Chairman. Last time I didn't vote on this. I abstained from the vote because I really didn't know which way it was going. I wondered which party was telling the truth. Well, not the truth. That's not the right word. I just felt I didn't have a grip of it, which sometimes you don't. But it niggled away at me when I went home that I didn't. I don't like not voting. I'm here to do a job, and voting is part of that. So I actually sat down and read around this quite a bit. That had actually been deferred previously to before it came and we approved it here at the committee, or the committee approved it. And it was deferred to go back to the Civil Aviation Authority to get some clarity on this. And it never came back. Nobody could prove either way whether this was right or wrong, which tells me that if it was in danger to the Civil Aviation Authority, there would be a letter, there would be a policy, there would be a document somewhere that would support that. That document failed to arrive. So I look at this in terms of flood zone 3, looking at different aspects of it, and the sequential test. This is a builder's yard. You cannot put them in the middle of March. You can't put them in built-up areas. Nobody wants that. This is the perfect place for it. There is community benefit within this, because a builder's yard close to a town the size of March will be a benefit to the people of March. I mean, we've got Eastland. I mean, there's a lot of rubble there needs to be taken away, and so there is community benefit to the community, and it'll have a builder's yard on hand. I feel that the objector, if he had been confident in his argument, would have came forward with a document. I mean, he's well connected with the Civil Aviation Authority. There should have been a document there that he could produce, and that document wasn't produced. And so therefore, I abstained from it last time, but I won't be abstaining from it this time. I will be supporting this application.
Councillor Mark.
I think, again, having had training from the head of planning, will probably be pleased to hear what I'm about to say. I think, yes, we would say this is an elsewhere location. However, there is mitigating circumstances. The simple reason is, as we've already said, we would not have this in the centre of March. The gentleman owns the land, from what I believe, and to be fair, it's out of the way. It's got good HGV routes as well. You know, it's got good vehicular routes, and it's where a builder's yard needs to be. And also, he's going to be living there for his own site security. As we all know, at the minute, telehandlers are getting stolen left, right, and centre, and driven into cash machines at a great rate of knots. Being on site, at least, hopefully, he would be aware of that.
Oh. There we go again. You know, we asked for a deferment last September, October time for more information about the Civil Aircraft Authority. We thought a report would be coming, and it didn't come. Councillor Benny was right. It's his prerogative to abstain from voting last time, and I'm happy to see him voting this time, and it's for the affirmative. So, but to be honest, I've always voted for this. I can see no wrong in this whatsoever. It's the right place for a builder's yard. We've got a scrap metal yard, Gold Star Metal Traders, some perhaps half a mile as the crow flies. Well, that's another place for outside. You know, we couldn't have that in the middle of the town centre in the 22nd century, could we? So this is an ideal place for this. I just cannot see for the life of me why it's taken 9 months to get this far. So I think we can all get a steer from where I'm coming from. I can got a steer, obviously, from Councillor Benny and Councillor Marks, and I shall be supporting this planning application in its entirety. Thank you, and I'll bring Councillor Marks in. Thank you.
I think, Jay, you raise a good point there as well. We've sat in this committee now. We've passed at least 2, if not 3, properties on that side of the road, including workplace. They became workplace homes, for want of a better word. You've got things like the crematorium, you've got a chicken farm, and everything else. It's in the middle of nowhere, and that's where this type industry needs to be.
See anybody else want to add to the debate, so I'm closing it now. So, officers, have you got anything to say at all?
Do Chairman, just if members are minded to support the scheme, remember that it is self-built, so it'd be unilateral undertaking, so it need to be deferred subject to that or delegated to myself subject to that and the conditions rather than just the conditions. Thank you, Chair.
I'll bring you in, Councillor Marks, then Councillor French.
So can we just clarify, on a self-build, so if we pass it, you're saying we then have to have a certificate, but the certificate, if an agent comes to you or a developer comes to you in the meantime, the builder comes on a self-build, you can't issue that until such time as it's got planning as such?
To Chairman, BNG is required, and to some extent it sits parallel to the planning system to some extent. One of the exemptions, though, from having to require to deliver BNG is through a self-build. The only way to require or to ensure that the self-build happens and therefore the exemption to BNG is appropriate is through a legal agreement, Section 106. Condition can't be because if you buy it, you deliver it. I can't take enforcement action against you because it sits with the land. So it has to be able to be taken through civil legislation. So for that reason, a unilateral undertaking is, as members are aware, we've produced a standard UU on our website. The idea is that expedites the process. We charge a relatively small checking fee because there's not a lot to check. So hopefully they can be done relatively quickly. But as I think we've had discussions before now, I've had members ask me why wasn't a decision notice issued. It's been 5 months. It's like, and we've been told you've got the UU. It's like, yeah, we got the UU yesterday. It's taken that long for them to complete. So the issue decision notice falls outside of our control. But yeah,
Sorry, just for clarity, if we get past this today, then the next part of that is you then go for the self-build certificate. Nobody can put a self-build certificate in place until such time as this has been passed or planning has been passed.
Through Chairman, no, it has to be in place before the decision notice is issued. But as this application was up for refusal, we would not request an applicant to submit it to us, charge them the fee for checking it, etc. Obviously, if an application that is likely to be approved is flagged up at week 4, we may even contact the agent then and go, we might well be supporting this, be conscious of it, and then week 7 months, it's definitely going to be approved. The officer's report's been checked. We'll contact the agent, and sometimes they come back almost straight away, and the decision's out the door. But obviously, when something's up for refusal, I don't want to waste people's time and money, basically.
So with a fair win, then, if everything goes in apple pie order and everybody gets on it fairly quick, I think that's the question we want to know, and everybody doesn't hang anything back, and you get your UU and everything sorted out. How long before the decision note, roughly, will it take? I suppose that's the question Councillor Marks is asking.
No idea. There's just too many moving pieces to get. Yeah, I'm not going to comment on that.
Sorry, Chair, it wasn't quite. The question I was asking is regarding when does the certification? Because I understand now. You've said we've got to get this agreement. What I was trying to get to is it something that usually would be in place? And what you've said is because it was deferred, likelihood, or there was a question whether it was refusal, you didn't take the agent or the applicant up on the money. However, normally you would have already had this in place. So it's not they've done anything wrong. It's just purely you are bringing up. Okay, that's fine. Sorry, Chair. That's what I was trying to get at.
Councillor French, you wanted to say something?
Thank you. Yeah, I nearly forgot what I wanted to ask. Probably 10 minutes ago, Matt, you did actually say, and I think it was a slip of the tongue, you did say defer, but I think you meant delegate. Am I correct? Thank you.
So, any more questions to officers at all? No? Okay, so we're closing that. So, I suppose, do I have a proposal to go with officer recommendation to refuse planning permission? Doesn't look so. With that's failed, can I have another proposal, please? Somebody do it. Okay, Councillor Marks, the proposal.
Okay. As we've already discussed, obviously flood zone 3s, we need to be consistent. We know we can mitigate against it going forward, so we see no reason that for flood zone 3. And as we've all agreed now, yes, it is an elsewhere location. However, there are mitigating circumstances because you don't put a builder's yard in the middle of town, and I believe that the gentleman owns the land, and also for site security as well. That makes sense.
I mean, that's my train of thought. So, right. So it just remains, have you got a seconder? Councillor French. So we've got a proposal to go against officers' recommendation to approve this. Councillor Marks is going to propose it. Councillor French is going to second it. Can I have a show of hands on that?
It's a unanimous decision, Chairman.
So that application has been approved. And when the decision note is finally here, could I have...
That's the delegation one to myself, yeah.
Can we see it, in other words? Yeah, we can. So that brings us nicely. We're gonna have 5 minutes now. It's 3 o'clock before we get on to the last application. So we'll have 10 minutes and then we'll crack on because we're doing very nicely. Thank you. Right, thank you members, thank you officers. Now I'll hand over to Alan Davis, he's the Principal Planning Officer here at Fenland, to present agenda item 10, F/YR 21 14970, agenda item number 10. Alan, when you're ready, please.
Thank you, Chairman. Item 10 is an update item to Planning Committee, which concerns an application for 1,200 dwellings with associated infrastructure, public open space, allotments, community garden, local centre, primary school, and demolition of existing buildings on site at land west of the Avenue March. The application was submitted by Persimmon Homes, and the application has been before members twice before, previously in November 2024, where members resolved to grant planning permission subject to Section 106 and appropriate conditions, and it returned to Planning Committee in January 2025 to update members under a confidential legal update. Again, the outcome of that committee was that the application members resolved to grant permission for the application subject to sections 106. Following those two committees, the application or section 106 negotiations has progressed with the applicant. However, there has been two changes to the proposed section 106 agreement, which the head of service believes members should be updated on due to the nature of changes from the previous planning committee. As you can see, for context, on site on the screen above, on the left hand side is the location plan. Note the site to the south is bounded by the houses backing onto Knightsend Road, and on the west the A141. On the right you can see the aerial photo, and you can see at the moment it's largely green fields. The site was allocated under the local plan as part of the West March broad location for growth for up to 2,000 dwellings. The application site does not cover all of the allocation site. There are further areas outside of the application site. The plan on the screen now is the site master plan for the whole site. As you can see, it indicatively shows the 1,200 dwellings. To the northeast is the area of open space. There's further open space running to the east of the site, and then in the sort of centre of the site, or lower centre, there is the proposed primary school playing pitches, and primary school extension land. As stated in the previous slide, the application does not extend to the full West March allocation or broad concept plan for that matter. For clarity, the above master plan has not changed since the application was previously approved or previously presented to the planning committee, and is provided simply for clarity for members. So in terms of the amendments to the section 106, which members are being consulted, members are being updated on, the plan committee previously received resolved to grant planning permission for the development subject to satisfactory 106 agreement and planning conditions. The scope of this report today is therefore limited to consideration of proposed amendments to the section 106 obligations. The principle of development and overall planning balance have already been established by the committee's previous resolution, and there are no new material considerations that would warrant a different conclusion on those matters. A contribution of £419,360 towards the improvement of an off-site football pitch at Estover Road was identified in the 2024 Planning Committee report. These improvements were to mitigate the impact of the development and provide, rather than provide on-site sports pitches, they would provide an improvement to an existing off-site sports pitch. These improvements have now been undertaken with funding from Sport England, and the funding for that particular football pitch is no longer required. Therefore, officers have worked with Persimmon Homes to undertake a feasibility study to ensure that biodiversity net gain of this development would not be detrimentally impacted were the sports pitches to be provided on site. The conclusion of the study is that the site can provide on-site sports pitches, and that is the first of the two updates to members. We are therefore looking for approval from members to amend the section 106 so that we can provide on-site sports pitches for local clubs. The second change proposed is that the affordable housing split, which is required to be, so affordable housing for the site is required to be at 20%. The applicant is looking to change that to 10% in the first phase, 20% in the second phase, and the remainder across the final phase. This would be in accordance with the current offer, so there wouldn't be any more or less affordable housing. It would just be delivered at a slightly different rate. The housing officer has been consulted on that proposal and confirms that there are no detrimental impacts as a result of making changes to when the affordable housing is provided. So, in summary, the application was originally heard at Planning Committee on 27th of 2024, where members determined to grant permission subject to Section 106. That confidential legal update was provided to members on 8th of January 2025, where members unanimously resolved to grant permission. Members delegate authority to planning officers to negotiate the Section 106 and finalise the agreed conditions. However, the committee report was clear on a number of Section 106 obligations, and in the head of services opinion, these two changes are a departure from what was agreed at the planning committee, and therefore members are being updated on those changes. This update seeks to clarify changes from the agreed committee report on off-site football pitch provision and affordable housing provision per phase. The amendments to Section 106 are not considered to materially impact the mitigation required by the agreement, but would instead ensure that development can still be progressed in a sustainable, phased manner, where financial payments as part of the Section 106 can be paid to the council at stages relevant to the development as a whole. As such, the proposal is recommended for approval, again subject to Section 106 negotiations and conditions delegated to officers. Thank you, Chair.
Yeah, thank you, Alan. Just for clarification, in this our presentation, our constitution doesn't allow any speakers, regretfully, but we are where we are, and as I said earlier, hopefully this will change, but won't affect today's meeting or this application at all. So, with that, questions, clarifications to officers. Councillor French.
Yeah, I've got lots of questions.
Did you want to ask 4 or 5 and then give somebody else a chance and we'll come back to you? Would that be helpful to you? Okay, because I'm sure there are other members have got quite a bit to say. But yeah, Councillor French, please carry on.
Thank you. Yeah, I'll probably mix them up. Just to give you clarification, you stated that Estover was allocated £419,360, and that work is going to be completed with Sports England. That information is not correct. March Town Council have given them 240,000 over 3 years, 80,000 per year. Next year we've got another 80,000 to pay. But that's just by the by for clarification. I really do think 1,200 homes, the community of March, are being shortchanged on this. We have been for the last 15, 20 years, 15 hectares short of public open space, and that does not include football pitches, rugby pitches, or cricket. I'm quite sure you're all aware that under the Inspire, that FDC tried to purchase the old auction house a few weeks ago. My understanding is that was going to be 13.03 hectares, which was 32 acres, and it was going to cost something in the region of 600,000 to actually lay the pitches out without anything else. Unfortunately, it went to auction and we were outbidded, but we still are desperate. This, I know it was explained that top end is where the pitches are going, but we're only talking about 1.2 hectares when we actually need a lot more than that, a minimum of 4.2. So I really do think with 1,200 homes, we really have been shortchanged on that. I'll leave it at that at the moment, but I also want to discuss the MATs, the transport stuff. I was a chairman of MATs at County Council for nearly 9 years. And some of this stuff has already been done, some of this stuff has been pulled, but I'll come back to that because that's further in the report.
Yeah, I'll don't know about anybody else, is it? I'm just going to carry on regarding the open space in a minute. I'm going to come on to the transport and just make officers aware the road layouts and that. I'm going to come on to that later, but at the moment I'm going to carry on from Councillor French. This is shortchanging March. There's no doubt about it. 1,200 houses, and all they can give in those 1,200 houses is 1.2 hectares of land. 3,000 plus people will be there by the time when that is built out. 3,000 people. That is about a seventh of perhaps March's 22 or 23,000 people now. That is a seventh of the total population of March as we speak now. This is disgraceful. My goodness me. We talk about getting people active. We're talking about when you're active, there's more chance of you living a longer, more healthier life. This doesn't promote that. One football pitch and one junior pitch, or one rugby pitch or one junior pitch, or whichever's decided on that, if this gets passed today. It is certainly, in my mind, absolutely awful. My goodness me, they haven't made a mistake of cramming those houses in, have they? I mean, I could go on and on and on, but I think you're all probably aware that I find this is totally unacceptable. But I'm happy to take a rest now and let somebody else come in. And it's Councillor Marks. Thank you.
Thank you, Chair. To reiterate what you're saying, I live at Maney. Maney, I believe, has got approximately 1,000 houses, and we at the present time have 6/7 football pitches, all of which are in virtually daily use, or at least weekly use and at weekends, hence why we've actually had to buy more land for sports facility. The 1.2 hectares, is that actually in the ownership of the applicant already?
Yes, so it would be under option with the applicant. So in terms of the 1.25 hectares that you refer to, that is the combined football pitch and under 12's football pitch that the exercise was carried out on to see if they could fit sufficient sports pitches on site. In terms of the actual overall open space on site, so the site will provide 17 hectares of green infrastructure. So green infrastructure includes things like planting, attenuation ponds, additional green space and green infrastructure. Of that, 14.5 hectares is considered to be open space. So there is a lot of open space on site proposed, and there are trim trails and various other measures such as allotments that you can see on the eastern boundary of the site and so on. The football pitches, at the time the application going to planning committee in 2024, there was no identified user, operator or anybody interested in managing and maintaining those pitches. At the time, it was therefore sought as an off-site financial contribution to improve off-site pitches. Since we've found out that that is no longer required, we've been able to speak to the applicant and see whether they can amend the application in terms of the section 106 to provide those pitches on site. Again, as you can see for the master plan, although it's an outline application with all matters reserved except access, they've demonstrated that there is a number of uses of open space and green space on site, mostly running up that eastern corridor. And in terms of the answer to your question, the area they're looking to put the pitches, they've done the exercise, and it's that. I'll see if the pointer works. Yeah. So it's that site there. They're looking at putting the on-site sports pitches, so it is within their option.
Okay. I hear football. What I don't hear is cricket, rugby, hockey. I just hear just football, which is a bit of a concern because there are other sports that use sports field, including athletics and everything else. they seem to have just narrowed in on, strangely enough, the one that's got the biggest publicity, and everybody's going to be thankful for. I'm not comfortable with this at all.
Please.
Through you, Chairman, I think there's a number of points we need to think about. Firstly, the site, this is part of a larger site. I'm going to use the term allocation, but it isn't quite true, allocated within the local plan. Subsequently, a broad concept plan was submitted and approved by the council, approved by the planning committee. That broad concept plan had a certain figure of pitches to be provided and indicated where they were going to be. That indication is roughly here, which is where the current allocation is. So that level of area, for want of a better term, provided for pitches as part of this application is consistent with what the broad concept plan had for there. The other part of where the significant part of the pitches were to be provided is land here that is not part of this application. Alongside parcels such as there, I think there's one there, and I think there's one that's been to committee previously up here, etc. So there are, because it's a broad concept plan, this is not one allocation coming forward. It's a multiple developments that bring forward the concept of providing housing. There is not a requirement for this site to provide all the sports pitches, and the broad concept plan explicitly kept the largest provision of sport pitches actually outside of where this area red is. So we've got to balance that and understand that when looking at this application. There's also the point, members, that a few months ago and then a couple of months before that, members have looked at this scheme previously and they actually accepted no on-site pitches on this was acceptable, with some off-site financial contribution. Because of the no need for the external off-site, officers could have issued the decision notice, got the Section 106 signed, and that money would have just fallen away. We would have just had no on-site pitches on here. As officers, we've made an informed judgment, so well, actually, we do want to provide some level of on-site pitches, so we've brought it back to members because we're changing what officers recommended in the report. But members need to think that only a few months ago, they accepted 0 pitches on this site. We're now offering 2 pitches. We've now got that, which is an uplift compared to where we were. Members would need to understand or to evidence why or what has happened between a few months ago and now, why suddenly this site here is now expected to provide any pitches, let alone more than the 2 pitches that they're offering. That matter has been dealt with by the committee twice and no objection raised. So if members are going to raise that or now look at that, they need to understand or evidence why there's been a change in circumstances. And my advice, members, isn't there a change in circumstances. The biggest change in circumstances that maybe people are willing to run them. And that is why we've brought back a scheme to deliver 2 spaces on the area that can provide 2 spaces. Whether or not members think there should be some way of looking to cap development, taking into account the whole, that is something that we could look to do. It would be difficult with it being a broad concept plan, and if members were likely to do that, it's likely we would have to bring back the other scheme that's already been to committee, because that members' resolution today will affect the consideration of that. So it may well be that if members are raising concerns in relation to delivering this housing and it not providing on-site pitches and it being part of the wider concept, that is going to be a material consideration to the other scheme of, roughly how many houses? 230 that's part of this broad concept plan. So it's likely, even though the Section 106 is through debate, we'll have to bring, it may be that we still recommend it for approval, but officers will probably have to bring that back because there would need to be, and it would be difficult to understand and explain why a site delivering what the broad concept plan has said it should deliver is causing a conflict with policy. But if this site is doing it, then why is the other site not raising a conflict with policy? So this would become a material consideration for this application as well. So members need to think about what they've thought of, what they've looked at previously, both on this site and other sites, and on the principle of the broad concept plan when they agreed it, or when the council agreed it, because I'm sure some of you weren't on this committee, but is irrelevant because the council decides it. We need to start as a thought process there, what we've looked at and what we've considered twice acceptable, and if actually what we've got in front of us, if there's any new material considerations, or actually is there even any conflict? We might not like something, but that does not mean there is conflict with policy. That does not mean there is harm in planning terms. We're not here to express our personal opinions. Trust me, I'd love to do that, but I'm not allowed to. You know, we're here to just determine it. So this is the balancing exercise, and this is why the officer's report, you know, is silent to some extent on these wider matters, because they're not before us, other than that for viability reasons, sorry, not viability, for, brain's gone completely blank, for demand reasons, we look to provide off-site. We've now found that actually we don't need that off-site. So let's bring it back, get members to agree to the idea of actually delivery on site to meet the needs of these future occupiers. So officers agreeing with what you're saying, but the point is this off-site that is no longer needed is now going to provide 2 on-site, which 6 months ago, however it was, members were quite happy to have no on-site provision. And that is what you've got, members have got to wrestle with what has changed in the intervening period to make any considerations different. And that would be my advice as your starting point. It's not about whether or not you think there should be provision. My starting point would be, what did you accept as members only 6 months ago? Thank you, Chairman.
Bring Councillor Benny in first, and Councillor French, and then I want to come in. So,
Yeah, thank you. The fact it's been here twice before, councillors changed. I wasn't here when this first came, the very first time, when this was screamed at me.
Through you, Chairman, this has been twice before and it's ongoing. That's why there's no debate. So everybody around this table has voted to approve this scheme twice because it was unanimous both times. So that's why Councillor Purser had to leave. So everybody around this table has supported this scheme in principle with no differences apart from what I would suggest is a betterment in relation to on-site provision and a slight, I wouldn't go as far as saying it's negative, but obviously a slight change in the delivery mechanism for affordable. They're the only 2 differences that members are looking at here to what you all looked at 6 months ago, you know.
Can I come back? Things change, things move on. And just because you made a decision 6 months ago, as events unfold, and we want to see some rugby pitches on there, or the March members do, why is that wrong that we cannot bring this back and change it? Because that surely would be the purpose of a councillor. We feed into what we are being told by members of the public and what the needs of the sports areas, you know, just because we made a decision 6 months ago, with events changing and that need changing, surely that should be our job to bring this back and say, well, no, actually, we've looked at this again with new evidence or with new requests, and therefore we do want to change this. Also at the same time, not being nasty, why didn't you highlight to us the lack of sports facilities there when you brought it to us 6 months ago? If it wasn't highlighted to us and nobody else picked it up because it wasn't brought to us, how come that? That surely that should have been put. Would you like sports facilities in there? I don't remember seeing that anywhere. So how does that one play?
Through you, Chairman. Firstly, the requirement for the pitches will be required for the Section 6 isn't any specific. It won't be football, won't be hockey, won't be rugby at this time. That would be something that would be delivered and agreed as through the reserve matters. So while they've done some bespoke work testing on the capacity for football, it doesn't mean that's what will be. That's just some modelling exercise. Yeah. Generally the sizes aren't particularly different. It's just in relation to the basics. So that's not unusual. That's not something that's a surprise. I think there's 2 interesting points. One is that obviously, as I've said, the BCP does not show the majority of the spaces here. That is in land to the north of the northeast arm of this development. So officers have told you that the site should provide X amount. We don't think, at the time we didn't think we could get people interested, so we're offering a financial contribution to offset that. So I think officers did explicitly explain that and tell members that. I'm not clear what officers' reports obviously officer reports have to make a recommendation. We'll never go into a report saying what do you want or what don't you want. The officer report explicitly explained that there was going to be no on-site provision. It explicitly showed this plan. It would have had all this information. There is a very long report that deals with all this, and it's members' gift to assess that as the level they wish and to challenge and ask questions during the debate. There is a specific time for asking questions. If members... The report covered this, I would say, more than adequately. It explained that the site should have X amount. It's not being provided. We're offering cash instead. Sounds a bit derogatory wording like that, but you see the point. And we are suggesting to members that that's acceptable, and obviously members agreed that. You know, if we don't do any scheme, we don't see what would you like to see, because that's not how the planning system works. You have an application in front of you. It's either policy compliant, it's not policy compliant. There's either material considerations that indicate that it should be approved or refused. And our officer report explains all that to you. As I keep going, the biggest issue is that this site is not, it's not working. This part of the red area is red, doesn't deliver the biggest part of the plan. And it was never designed from the BCP. It'd be very difficult to try and challenge that. And when I say very difficult, I mean, yeah. I'm not going to say that, but yeah. Thank you, Chairman.
Okay. Bring Councillor French in, then I'd like to say something.
Thank you. I think a lot of the issues here are misinformation. I'm going to take you back to 2019-20 when I was a county councillor, and we had £5 million to be spread across the county on various things. There was 325,000 allocated to the rugby club. Unfortunately, because they didn't have the land, they couldn't get the money. But I'll take you a step further back to 2015. County Council owned the land at Eastover. We're going to put 249 houses on there. We fought it. About 20 or 25 of us went to Cambridge County Council, lobbied them, and we were very successful. So the houses were not built. We then went to Sports England or whichever organisation, and also with the help of Marchtown Council, I think we gave them another 325,000. Hence, the pavilion was built, the pitches were built, the muggers, everything down was built. It has always been known that there's a shortage of sports. I'm not a football fan, I'm not a rugby fan. So I've got no interest whatsoever, but there is a need. The people of March deserve to get it. If we're going to have all these houses, and it's not just this 1,200 houses, all the applications we've approved over the last, 12 months, we're now over 2,000 houses, and we're not getting a community benefit for March. And I'd say misinformation. It is in your report that nobody came forward. I can't believe that for 1 minute. We had the sports, the football, we had the cricket people. Some of them must have been forward. So I'm going to leave sports at the moment, but I want to take you to maths.
Just while you're just getting your computer up to speed, Sport England say they've never been approached by it. So
No. Chairman, what's happened is that Sports England have now been written to, and they've come back and haven't been consulted on the change. The point is that what they've been advised is that rather than providing the full amount, that we're only providing this. So I think you've gone back to Sport. So that's why we didn't consult them, because actually we're now getting what the BCP said, which is the right amount of development for this site, not having to offset it to provide uplift. So we needed agreement from them previously because it was contrary to policy. We considered that this is policy compliant, this is what the BCP states, therefore there wasn't any need to. We've gone back to them to clarify that, but to use Councillor French thing, that's misinformation. They've been advised that rather than the 5 hectares, it's only going to be these 2 pitches. That's not the case. The land for the other pitches is still to the north outside of this area is red. You know, other people can bring that forward if they wish. It's in their gift, you know. Thank you, Chair.
Yeah,
Councillor French, please come back.
If I can just have clarification, I'm looking at Appendix A on page 249. So we've got at the top a community garden allotments, and I know in the report it says Marchtown Council will not take on the allotments. No, we will not. It's not our responsibility to take more allotments on. It says 419,360 contribution, money to be directed to other sports provision. So is that 419,360 going to be still in there to be used for other sports? That's a question.
The answer to that question, Councillor, is no, it won't be. So that 419,000 is the sports pitches on site would be in lieu of that money. That money was to be provided for improvements off site. Once that off site improvement is no longer required, the value is then met by the on site sports provision, so or sports pitch provision, which obviously that money would go into drainage, white lining, producing the suitably flat surface, soil testing, all that sort of thing to make sure that the pitches are acceptable for whichever sports club takes them on.
Mr. Chairman, if I can say, I think that is an absolute disgrace, but we won't dwell on that. Right, I'm going to look at highway contributions, 559,602.50 pence towards the schemes identified by the March area transport. Junction improve on the A141 in the MAT study, which has been approved in writing by the local highway. The scheme identified within the March area transport includes A141 Hostmore Avenue arm, 3-arm of movement. I'll tell you now that's never going to happen. There's an ownership dispute. As I say, I was the chairman of MATS for, I've lost count now, 9 years. It's ongoing issues at the Hostmore. It's not going to happen unless they do a compulsory purchase. So you've got A141 20-foot signal improvements. That's already been done. So that's hopefully going to be completed, I think, by November this year. So how can you ask retrospectively for some funding? St Peter's Road Improvement Scheme, that's been done now while we speak. It's got to be completed before the kids go back to school. So what's in here is totally and utterly out of date. And you've got 25,000 towards a MOVA-based controller. Can somebody tell me what that is on the A141605? I've got no idea.
Yeah, you're right to ask. Would you like to answer that?
Through you, Chairman. Obviously, that's the appendix that references the information at the time of the previous report. It's quite likely, it's always possible that highways works may be done through other schemes, or the county council may decide to deliver it. But that would be no different if the decision notice had gone out the day after it had been issued. If they'd already signed the Section 106. The fact that you may say there's land ownership, we all know land ownership isn't a planning issue. If they can't provide the highways works, they can't deliver the housing. So, that's not, I would suggest, a reasonable refusal. And I'm a little unclear on the relevance of a lot of this when I said this was already agreed. This is not, the highways issue is not a new issue. There may be certain things that have tweaked, but that's actually just saying that it's more likely the schemes will come forward because these mitigations are being delivered through other systems. So that's a reason to say the scheme is more likely to come forward than less, rather than it being a concern. But as I said, as you said yourself, this is an appendix. This is a dated report. The update report doesn't deal with anything to do with highways because there is no change in highway circumstances in officer's opinion for members to revisit that. And that is why the report deals with two sole issues, which myself as a professional considered were different enough to potentially require members to come to a different resolution. I'll be honest, I assumed that the idea of, rather than not needing nearly £500,000 and giving it to the developer and actually getting on-site pitches would be a benefit that members would have liked, rather, because at the end of the day, we accepted nothing on site 6 months ago. And in relation to the affordable housing, as the application says, there's a slight increased risk for the council, but it's considered to be quite minor. And I assume that would be the matter we'd be discussing in debate right now, to be honest. Thank you, Chairman.
You come back, Councillor French, and then you can have a
The problem
arrest.
is we have got this in front of us today. Most of this information is totally and utterly out of date. I don't know when was the highway survey carried out. That was probably 2020, 2021. The amount of traffic on the roads today are horrendous. And we're talking about over 2,000 dwellings, 4,000 people on that side of March. We're talking about 4,000 cars. You know, the road structure can't take it. So when was the survey done? And is it up to date? We've got problems at Knight's End, with problems at Knight's End Road, Mill Hill. There's something in there that they wanted some funding for Gold Road. Gold Road has been paid by Cannockirk. There's nothing wrong with it. You've got the new junction at 141 and Hobbs Lot. That's costing millions. So, you know, their 550,000 contribution towards everything. It's like, you know, peanuts, really.
I'm going to come
totally out of date.
I'm going to come on to that in really big detail further on in the debate, Councillor French. But would you like to answer Councillor French's question?
Thank you, Chairman. So, in terms of going back to the MATS contribution you referred to, just for clarity, the appendix that you're referring to is the appendix from the 2024 Planning Committee report. The key element in the MATS contribution at 5.13 states that the contribution of £559,602.50 towards the schemes identified within the MATS March Area Transport Study, or any alternative junction improvement scheme on the A141 in the MATS study area, which has been approved in writing by the LHA, the Local Highways Authority. So, whilst you refer to things moving on since the resolution to grant at the 2024 committee, that contribution would still be paid by the applicant to Highways for them to carry on with the improvements required as part of the MATS scheme. There are other improvements required. The MATS, obviously, as you well know, the MATS improvements amount to millions of pounds across the town. So if those junctions had already been improved, they would be improving the next junction. So that sort of clarifies what would happen with the MATS financial contribution. In terms of highways and the transport modelling and the assessment, so the transport evidence was updated and reviewed in 2024. It's the same details as provided when the application was considered last. The modelling included existing traffic conditions in the 2022 surveys. So the date is 2022, so post-COVID. As members are possibly well aware, the sort of peak traffic survey volumes were prior to COVID, obviously significantly dropped during the COVID period and have almost returned to pre-COVID levels now. The forecast traffic growth was using the temporal model, and it assesses the future situation from 2036 to 2041. It's also assessed committed developments at that time. It's also assessed the Westry Retail Park. In terms of the traffic modelling that was done, it was done for the full strategic allocation, so the broad concept plan area, so wider than this development. It was undertaken based on 2,000 dwellings identified as part of the allocation and as part of the broad concept plan. So if you like, it's a worst case scenario if the whole development, not just this application, but the other sites came forward. The modelling has therefore not only assessed the application site, but also the likely impact of wider plan growth across the allocation area. In terms of Knight's End Road, the temporary phase 1 access from Knight's End Road was tested assuming 200 dwellings, so that's obviously the southern access, occupied before the A141 roundabout access is delivered, and it was shown to operate well within capacity with minimal queuing. The applicant agreed to fund or contribute towards off-site highways improvements, including Slade End roundabout mitigation works, Pease Hill roundabout improvements, which is a £134,000 contribution, and a proportionate contribution towards town centre signal improvements. So all of this has been assessed by Cambridgeshire County Council, and as I say, the data that was used to assess the 2024 Planning Committee report, that was a worst case scenario of the whole broad concept plan, not just the Persimmon Homes application for the 1,200 dwellings. So Highways have looked at it and assessed the worst case scenario. So hopefully that gives you some answers to your questions.
It doesn't give me any comfort, but it might, Councillor French.
If I can just come back, this is totally out of date. You've got in there, and you did pick up, Alan, the Pease Hill roundabout. They have withdrawn that. The last meeting we had in Mats was probably February, March 2025 last year. They haven't had another Mats meeting since, so Mats is not up to date. But and one thing that nobody's picked up under the Mats, there's supposed to be a Northern Link Road, and that was the last phase. But they have withdrawn the Pease Hill. The Pease Hill is desperately in need of upgrade. I mean, I live at West Street. I live on the 141. I see the traffic every day on it. It's just absolutely solid.
Okay, we'll give you a couple of minutes to regain your thoughts for the next questions, and I'll take Councillor Marks then. I think I'll come in then.
Sorry, just for clarity, I did look up what a NOVA system is, and it's MOVA. It's a microprocessor optimized vehicle acquisition. Is an active traffic signal control system used to manage traffic at isolated junctions, roundabouts, and pedestrian crossings. I think that has already been done, because that's on the 141 where they're doing the roadworks as you go down long gravel. So I think that has already been done.
Here we go. I'm going to leave highway matters till later on. I don't think they've been debated properly. I don't think they've been taken into consideration properly. I think, in my own personal opinion, I think it's flawed. I think County Council, the decision is flawed, but I'll come into that later. Let's go back to the play provision. This is what we talked about first. This is what we think is, I absolutely think it's absolutely unfair. So the land north of the application site on there is in Persimmon's option of ownership.
So just to clarify, Chair, hopefully this pointer works. There you go. So this green land here, that's within Persimmon's contract. That's their option. Yeah. It's this land here. So directly to the north, this site that's approximately here, that's the March Cricket Club. Okay. In between the cricket club and the edge of Persimmon's option, there are two fields here. So on the broad concept plan, the remainder of the sports pitches were proposed to go basically here and here. So this whole area is referred to in the broad concept plan as the sports pitch area or the sports zone. And when you've read the broad concept plan, you'll see that it refers to 5 hectares of pitch provision. Yeah. So it was assumed in the broad concept plan that pitch provision would be here within Persimmon site, but also these two fields to the north. And then also further north, there's a further set of open space and pitch provision, again, that's referred to in the broad concept plan. And obviously, Persimmon have no control over those sites. Given the concerns about sports pitch provision, we've contacted Persimmon about these sites. They know who the landowner is, and they had contacted the landowner at the time. I believe it was an individual. It's not owned by a specific business, but they were unwilling to sell at the time, so that never came forward as part of the option. But obviously, we can't force, as the plan system functions, we can't force developers to buy land outside of their control or put development on things that they don't include within their red line.
Okay, so let's look overall at the application. I spent hours looking at this. My wife thinks that I don't exist the last 2 or 3 weeks, But anyway, we are wet a couple of weeks, so we are where we are. The affordable houses in the first phase, they only want to get 10%. Okay, the second phase, they give 20%, which is what we wanted anyway. The third phase, they'll make up the difference. Looking on that, the first 50 houses, Anglian Water have allowed them, in my view, quite wrongly, to connect onto the existing sewer. The pumping station at Knights End Road, which it's being pumped into eventually, gets absolutely clogged up. It needs total renovation, and probably eventually it needs a new one, because further down to the east, down Barker's Lane, as Councillor French will tell you, we've been down there several times and spoke with Anglian Water. It gets blocked up. When we get major rainfall, people down Barker's Lane can't flush the toilets. They can't they can't get the water away, so it backs up. And in their infinite wisdom, and I've spoken to the lady at Anglian Water, they're letting them have another 50, which is another free hit, really, isn't it? Because they haven't got to update the sewage for a start. Also, which I'll come on to later in the debate, they're not going to build a roundabout until such times as 201 houses are actually occupied. So there could be 300 houses built there before a roundabout, or in some state of, of being built. It could be some of them floor level, it could be some of them first floor level, it could be some of them just need the roof putting on. But there certainly won't be 200. They're not going to sell one, then build another one, are they? So there's going to be lots more houses under construction there. So there's going to be more traffic. So they're not going to build that roundabout anytime soon, are they? So, in my opinion. So another free ride they're getting. So they're getting monies for 201 houses. They're not paying the proper rate for the first, their dues for the first thing. They're just about doing it on the second one, which is fine. The third one could be 10 years off. So that doesn't make good reading to me, in my opinion. And I own a business, as many of us have in this table. We all like, if we're going to check the chance, we like the money up front. We want the most of the money up front, then tail off at the end. I think that's a fairly safe thing to say. So I'm not happy with that at all. So actually, what they're doing is they're not paying anything, and the people of March are paying. Well, we're paying for it as taxpayers. We're paying for this. We're not getting the proper service, and they're not paying their dues from the day one. So that's my opinion, and I just think the whole aspect of this is totally wrong. Sorry if I'm out of turn by saying this. I don't actually agree with any of this, and I'm mindful. I don't know what anybody else thinks. I'm mindful of turning this down, the whole thing, and asking them to go away and rejig all this. But I'm happy to listen to other members, and I certainly will now. I'm going to bring in Councillor Marks, and then I'm going to bring in Councillor French, and then I'm going to and anybody else before I continue.
Point of clarity in relation to the chairman's point. It was accepted by members at the last two times that under provision of affordable housing to facilitate development was acceptable, and that it would be made up. It was inferred that it would be in the second phase, and that's why I've suggested it needs to come back to members, so members to accept that the make-up percentage, for want of a better term, is made up in the third phase rather than the second phase. But members have already accepted previously that an under provision in the first phase is necessary to facilitate this development.
Well,
Chairman.
Sorry, but I'm going to disagree with that. I'm quite allowed to change my mind on what I see in front of me now when I see actually how it is, and I'm mindful of actually changing my mind, and I will not be afraid of saying so, and haven't been afraid of saying so. But having said that, I'm going to bring in Councillor Marks.
I think we've been in debate for, or we've been talking about this for 40 plus minutes at the minute, and it just, all I hear is loss, loss, loss. It seems to me the people of March and surrounding areas are losing. Yes, we've got an application here. Yes, at some point we'll gain 1,200 houses. Yes, some of them will be affordable houses. But it just feels to me that there's so much loss at the present time, including whether they're football pitches, whether they're going to put the money into those, or sports fields, or whatever you want to call them. The roundabout was a key issue to me last time round. I hear 201 houses and they'll start building a roundabout. There will be 300 houses there. In the meantime, where does all the HGVs go when they're going in and out of sight? 8 o'clock in the morning, when the 200 plus houses going to take the kids to school, going to work and everything else. It just feels to me that this is, as much as I understand what the head of chairman is saying, the head of planning is saying, we did pass this and we've passed it twice. I think we still come back to the same debate. We just seem to be losing, and I just don't get why we should put people of March in this situation, and also surrounding, because the road links are going to be bad, and that's going to be another hold up we've got. We've got building project 2 miles or 3 miles down the road, which is the reservoir. Now, yesterday I spoke to head of planning at chairman's briefing, and we can't allegedly take that into consideration. But they're not spending multi-million pounds digging fields up as I speak to not do something there. That's going to be more traffic, more hold up, more building. Yeah, somewhere along the line, when does this just become meltdown for all the roads? And we're getting close to that already before we get this in front of us again. 1,200 houses. But why can't the developers, I know they say, well, we can't afford to, whatever. If you can't afford to do it, don't build it. It's quite a simple way forward. Why should the people of March and surrounding areas suffer because, we can't afford to do it? Don't build it then.
Yeah, very pertinent points. I think it's what I said, putting a bit of meat on the bones. Councillor French, then Councillor Benny.
Yeah. Thanks, Chair. Going back to the affordable houses, I do not find it acceptable. In the first phase, it's 10%. It should be 20%. I believe, I haven't checked the figures recently, that we had something like 3,000 people on the waiting list, and it's growing all the time. Going back to what Councillor Mark said about the state of the roads, I know what the state of the road is on the A141 at Pease Hill. We have a left-hand turn only out of Hostmore, which was put in as a temporary left-hand turn in 2003, 23 years ago, and County Council have done nothing about it. I know there's an issue with a landowner, but they need to get their act together and get these traffic lights in, because what's happening, the HGVs are coming out Hostmore, turning left, going round the roundabout and coming back. And that roundabout, I would say every 6 months, that has got to be repaired with the state, because it is just the heavy weight of these lorries coming round, and it's churning up all the roads. They need to sort Hostmore out as soon as possible, to make it acceptable. That's without any traffic. When these houses are at Knight's End Road, the avenue, if they're coming up Knight's End Road, it's the worst possible junction. It's dangerous. So if they're coming to Peterborough or wherever they're going to work, the traffic is going to be horrendous. So, we need to think really seriously about this road safety.
I'm coming into that, but you're absolutely right what you say. I was a county councillor in those days, and when you were, and we relinquished our seat for various reasons. In 24, whenever it was, 25, whenever it was. But Councillor Benny next, Councillor Marks, then I'm going to come in. Thank you.
Yeah, Mr. Chairman, I look at this report for the traffic was 2021, and I've got the figures in front of me here. For what traffic figures were, and traffic numbers dropped dramatically in 20 and 21. They have, I know why it is. Yeah, and we've struggled, and we are now above pre-COVID levels on traffic. So in 2021, it's a figure that they've used within Cambridgeshire, 254.4 vehicle movements. We're now up to 292.6 vehicle movements in 2025. It also says there's an increase from 24 to 25 of 1.9%, so there'll be another increase on this year. And I'm not happy that this is, you've got Barker's Lane development coming in March East. You've got Wound Farm at Chatteris, which is putting extra strain. If the developments in March are putting strain on Chatteris Apple Green Roundabout, that must work back the other way as well. That does. We've got Chatteris Gate, which is sort of the tail end of the Hallam land, that's being developed out. So there will be more traffic, and I'm not convinced that this is the right traffic scheme for the people of March. I mean, it's their bypass. We've got a bypass in Chatteris that is quicker to go through the town than it is to use the bypass at 5 o'clock in the afternoon. March is congested. It's got one bridge. These numbers do not say to me that this is the right thing. It's in our remit to refuse this. And Mr. Chairman, I think you are right. This is not right. And I'm not happy with the numbers. I think these numbers are out of date. They need looking at again.
Councillor Benny, I think, thank you for that. I think it's a distinct possibility that I may go down that route. I may put something up forward for the proposition or proposal that may happen. Don't want it to happen, but I think maybe that we're going along those lines. I can see you looking at it, me looking at it. Councillor Marks is not that far away. I'm certain, reading his mind. But then there we go, Councillor Marks, and I will come in. Oh, sorry.
Through Chairman, for clarity, and I don't know if Alan explained it explicitly, but we used the 2018 information was used to influence the baseline. So although the surveys although the work was done in 2021, it used 2018 data.
Makes it worse.
Why?
Well, if you're using if you're doing it in 2021 and then using 2018 data, you've got 3 years. Certainly, you've got a 3 years deficit. Surely.
Through Chairman, no. In the report explains it was agreed between Count and the applicant because that is pre-COVID, and that's the point we're trying to get at, is that your concerns are being raised that the information used was influenced by COVID, but to actually offset that, they had gone back and used data pre-COVID. So the concern that the data is under reflects reality because of COVID and moving on time isn't true, because the data was explicitly went back to 2018 to ensure that it did reflect COVID. And as Alan said earlier, while car park have increased and then they aren't quite back to it, so I would suggest that any slight difference between 2018 and now is going to be minimal, marginal, not be demonstrable, especially taking into account, as Alan said, they've based and tested this up on the way in relation to 2046, did you say?
Yeah.
So that's something, so new developments may come forward in the lifetime between now and 2046, but they will now need to shoulder their burden of additional traffic. It's not this. So I would suggest that any concerns that the data is based on out-of-date data because it's from COVID and not true, that would be a very dangerous route to take, is what I would suggest.
Well, Councillor Benny's just read off some statistics, and it shows to me it's about 18% on what Councillor Benny said in whenever to whenever, a difference on increased traffic. And Councillor French lives on that road, and she says it's increasing by the week or by the month and by the year. I mean, who better judge than her, living on the main road, to make that assumption?
And my house vibrates horrendously.
Councillor Marks, thank you.
I think also we're looking at 2018, and as we all know, since 2018, we've had the digester plant, which is just the type of vehicle as well. We're now getting 50 to 60 tractors by the hour during the season where they're cutting the maize and stuff. These are bigger vehicles as well, which are holding up traffic. There is more traffic certainly, and more agricultural traffic using those roads. Equally, today, on the way in here today, I had to wait for a 360 digger to go out also onto the A141, which luckily was turning left, not right, because we've got the reservoir. They're digging various trial holes at the reservoir. This just feels to me, as I've said previously, and I've been quoted in the paper, we seem to be losing sight of sports facility, which we should be able to have, open green space area, which residents should be able to have for people of March as well, for the benefit. And I just feel the developer, yet again, it's glittery when it starts because they want to get their planning over the line. And now all of a sudden, once they've got what they think they need, they start pulling stuff away. How long before this is back in front of us again? Because we can't afford to do this, we can't afford to do that. I think personally at the minute, I'm very much with Councillor Benny and Councillor Connor and the chair. I don't see this at the present time.
Well, I think I can come in here. I think contrary to that, this all that glitters is not gold here. It's a bit of old brass being coated over. They're not actually giving us anything, to be truthful. We actually, well, I don't think they are, not in relation to the 1,200 houses. They might be if it's 50 houses or something like that, absolutely wonderful. But they're not giving, in my opinion, not giving us anything for 1,200 houses. There's 3,000 people, up to 3,000 people going to live on this proposed development. You know, now I'm going to come on to it now, and then I'll bring in Councillor French. Oh, does he? And I'll continue.
Thank you, Chairman. Just to give some facts and figures in terms of the on-site open space, as I mentioned earlier, green infrastructure for the whole site amounts to 17.4 hectares. Yeah. The actual open space, so they don't class some of it, as you can see on the western boundary, some of that hedgerow is classed as green infrastructure, would be open space. The open space is 14 hectares. If you look at the overall site, size of the site is 52 hectares. Green infrastructure, 17 hectares of that. 1/3 of this site, approximately, will be green infrastructure and open space. So to say they're not providing anything is incorrect. They're providing nearly 1/3 of the site as green infrastructure and open space. I'll carry on because we want to cover the highways matters as well. So in terms of saying that they're not providing anything, they are providing a lot. Nearly 1/3 of the site will be green and open space. As I mentioned earlier, there's things like a trim trail that's proposed, and I think the distance of that is about 1.52 kilometres, which will snake around the site. There are other proposals within the site that provide for leisure, recreation, exercise. There's obviously the proposed allotments. Again, that will be secured in the Section 106. There's also a number of muggers, some multi-use games areas for teenagers and leaps for younger children. They're identified on the master plan. Again, that will be secured through Section 106. So there is a range of leisure, recreation and open space on site. In terms of highways, just to again give you some confirmation, so the Knights End Road junction, that's required to be implemented before first occupation. In terms of the roundabout on the A141 that members have concerns about, the actual wording of the condition, which is condition 45 as proposed, is prior to occupation of the 201st dwelling, the developer shall deliver the A141 site access roundabout as shown in principle on drawing, etc., etc. That condition is worded to make sure that the roundabout is built and in prior to the 201st occupation. So in order to deliver that, it is likely that the applicant would have to start works on that potentially at 50 occupations, maybe even earlier. So they would be working towards having that roundabout in prior to the 201st occupation. Also touching upon other highways works, there's also the Slade End roundabout, which is condition 43, that has to be in place by the 50th occupation. And there's a number of other off-site highway works which all need to be in place by the 100th occupation, and they're identified on a number of plans. So as you can see from that, the conditions and the trigger points for those highways improvement works to be in place, they're all very early on in the development of the site. Going back to something Councillor French mentioned earlier in terms of affordable housing, the reason for the affordable housing to be amended, and hence why we've brought this application back to committee, is because a lot of these highway works, when you look at them, are very expensive to do. They're all at very early stages of the development or almost at the beginning, and therefore, as a developer, their cash flow is impacted. So in order to make sure their cash flow works for the duration of development, they are looking to provide more affordable housing later on in the scheme. So again, that gives you those reassurances that the intention is for those highways improvement works to be delivered early on site and be in place before the vast majority of the dwellings come forward. So, as I say, there's conditions proposed 42 upwards that covers the highways works, and again, we're working in conjunction with Cambridgeshire County Council, highways and their legal team to make sure that highways aren't prejudiced or detrimentally impacted as a result of this application. They are part of the Section 106 negotiations, and they are a signatory to the Section 106 negotiations. So everything that the applicant puts forward or suggests for highways in the Section 106 is considered not only by ourselves and our legal representatives, but also County Council, Highways legal representatives. So hopefully that answers some of those concerns that members have expressed. That
before I bring in
the highways concerns, the highways concerns, it's front loaded and delivered early in the development before the vast majority of those houses come forward. So as I say, conditions 40 onwards cover that, and it's covered in Section 106, and that Section 106 discussion is in conjunction with the applicant and County Council Highways. So hopefully that just answers a few of those queries.
Thank you, Alan. Councillor Marks, Councillor French.
Thank you, Alan. I have to say, it doesn't give me any confidence. I live on a road that was supposed to be adopted, and nobody in the Cambs County Council spotted that what the road adoption, the paperwork was wrong to start with, let alone then could implement it, and it cost us £2,500 each as residents to get the road finally adopted. I have got a concern that we're stuffing ourselves into something. Who's actually, bearing in mind what's happening in 18 months, 2 years, when we become combined authority or whatever, who in Cambs County Council is actually going to have the paperwork to remember to implement this and try and sort of that's my first concern. Number two, you mentioned about the coverage of open spaces and all the rest of it. I look on that, and you did, I'm sure, say that the attenuation ponds are factored into that. Not being funny, attenuation ponds are usually full of water. Kids, my wife would go ballistic when the children used to come in muddy and everything else. I don't see how we can say, and looking at that, there is an awful lot of water on there, which to me is attenuation ponds, and I don't think that we can class that as open green space. I'm sorry, personally, I think we are being yet again sold short by something that the developer thinks he can get away with. It's all shiny, it's all nice. It's not. I'm not going to say it's not true, but it question. There is a question there regarding that as well. So at the moment, again, I'm still leaning towards no.
The French.
Thank you. So we've got 52 hectares of public open space. Why, in goodness sake, can a couple of these hectares not be shared with the football pitches, cricket, or whatever? I would be happier to see some of that public open space used for facilities of that. I'm going to give you a history lesson. In 1993, a document produced by this council was called DABS, Development Area Boundary Documents. That was 21 years ago. And it stated quite clearly in the document, March would get a country park. We're still waiting.
So I'm going to go back on highways again here, because that is what worries me more probably than anything. Because so we talk about when the last county council did their traffic survey, and since we've got cumulative impact here, we've got 500 houses on March East, and I know all about them because they're going to just be behind me. 450. It's more than 500, but I can't remember. I can't remember the exact figure. But the David Wilson Barrett homes have been signed off for the 106. Yeah, there may be, but whatever there is, it's a lot more than 500. And I've just said 500 to be, so I wouldn't be. So I'd be sort of under than over. But however many there is, a lot of them have been signed off. They've got Harris fencing right round their boundary fencing. They're putting a construction pads and all the bits and pieces. So there are likely to start. There's 500 there. And they're nice. I would imagine these will be, some of these will be built before the other is, if it's even successful, which I'm hoping it probably won't be, we're even started. Okay. It's got 48 affordable houses in Wilmington Road. They're in construction phase. A lot of them are they're not far off from being finished. Some of them are not, some of them are. We've got some dwellings, and I can't remember how many, in Springfield Avenue. All affordable houses, Homes England, much needed, but they're going to be traffic. There must be 40 or 50 there, probably. I've no idea. We had 30 some odd houses in Knights End Road, which actually borders onto the site in question, what we're talking about. That was passed 3 or 4 months ago, so that's got planning permission on that. That can more or less start any time. So we're looking probably 700 or 800 houses here, roundabout, within a mile of that application site. And a lot of those will use the Knights End Road to, once they're built, cut through to get onto the bypass. Some will obviously not. Some will obviously go off to work or shopping in Cambridge or Huntingdon, but they will still be using the Mill Hill roundabout, which is absolutely in need of refurbishment there and upgrade. But some of them will be going round the roundabout because they don't want to take the life in their own hands, which I don't. And they'll be going round the roundabout, and they'll be going down the bypass, strangely enough, and they'll be going towards Wisbech and Peterborough, doing the work or the shopping or whatever they need to do. And that'll be putting more pressure on that. It's got a nasty sweeping bend, and then they're asking us now, say 201 houses before the roundabout is in operation. Then we're talking about another 700 or 800 vehicles a day. 2 vehicles a house. At the best way, that's 400. Then you've got all the utilities, still the traffic, the construction traffic building around it. We've got Ocado, and there are others, Amazon, and there are others, Post Office, and everybody else. So that could be built up to 600 or 700 easily vehicles a day. I think, in my own personal opinion, and I'm not being disrespectful at all to anybody, and I hope it isn't, my view is the Cambs County Highways is flawed. I just, and as Councillor French has intimated, and as we did say at the last meeting when we passed those houses in Boroughmore Road, when the guy was going to put up a small mini roundabout and traffic lights at the top, it was mentioned in this committee that the bypass road, is getting clogged up. It was mentioned that. I think it was Councillor Benny mentioned it, and I think also Councillor French, which was absolutely right, because I know, I don't live far away, and I can see it takes longer to get from one end of the town to the other through the bypass. You need rocket science to work that out. So I think it's flawed. So that's one aspect I'm not happy with. So for me, that's in need of another transport is looking at again for Cambs County Council, because I just feel from 2022 the traffic's built up a heck of an amount. So I'm not happy with that, and I'm not also happy, as I said, the 10% with the affordable housing to start. We should not be not sitting here on the planning committee worrying about the viability and their cash flow. Nobody worried about my cash flow when I was in business. I ain't worried about yours, are they? They don't say if you can't afford to buy a new forklift truck, you don't have to pay until it's 3 years old, do they? So I think it should stand its own. We should not be, the people of Mats should not be subjected to this application, this horrible application, in my opinion, with that view. It should stand on its own 2 feet, or else it should be refused. And I'm still not changing my mind as of yet. Somebody in the committee might convince me to probably defer it at best, but I will not stick my hands up in any shape or form to say I'm happy with this, because I'm not. But anyway, enough of me. I've rabbited on too much, I'm sure. So Councillor French would like to add to it, and then Councillor Miffordin. Thank you.
Thank you, Chairman. Yeah, for your information, it is 40 dwellings in Springsfield. Barker's Lane and Lambsdove is fenced off. What they're actually doing, I was talking to a farmer last week, and he did actually say they're doing their archaeology. Now, bearing in mind, these two sites, I think it's about one's 425, and I can't remember the other figure. The reserves matters are not in yet. I don't even think the section 106 outline has been. Yeah, I don't.
David Wilson homes they have.
Have we? I haven't seen a reserve matter.
I think I'm right in saying I think it was signed off some 6 or 7 weeks ago.
They're actually doing an archaeology dig at the moment on both sites.
Ever. They're likely, with them having planning permission pass, and this 106 with the David Wilson site is more likely to be added traffic to the situation before these ever get started. You know, you can juggle the figures a bit how you like, but that is I think that's fact. So, Councillor Mifflin, thank you.
Thank you, Chair. I'm just only going to echo what everyone's already said, and also when Alan had his explanation, he did clarify some things to me as well. But what I wanted to say, as Alan rightly said, he said that the highway concerns are being front-loaded highway concerns, which I understand. But the truth is, if after you build 201 houses, all occupied, you've already added stress to the highways network with the amount of cars that are going to go there. Not just the highways network, not just the cars, the people who are living there as well, and then people putting up with the construction works. So I don't think that eases our concerns at all. And like I said, just adding my 2 pence to it, because everyone's talking and I haven't said anything.
Councillor Mifflin, Councillor Marks.
Thanks, Chair. Chair, we now seem to almost be going round in circles. Pity we haven't got a March bypass we could go round in circles on. So, well, you have, but we need another bypass to bypass and bypass. We have an application in front of us. We're obviously not happy with it. I can see we can either say yes, we can say no, or as you just said, defer. Quite honestly, we are, as a Fenland strapline, as I've said previously today, open for business. This will bring business in as well with builders and everything else. So I'm mindful of that, but I'm also very mindful of what we've been speaking about, but regarding highways, regarding public open space, regarding benefit to the public, sports and everything else. May I make a suggestion that we put a list together, we defer it, we get the planners to go back to the developer and say, we are not happy at this point, to see if we can find some common ground. And I don't know if there is any common ground available, but at least we've done the best then. If it comes back and it's a no, then we know where we're going as a committee. However, if we can find some common ground, they give money to something, you know, it's not negotiation. Planning is not negotiation, but equally, we've got to be 100% happy of what we're putting our names to. And I just feel that maybe a deferral and for the planners to go back may be the way forward. At the moment, I'm mindful of either no or defer. I'm certainly not in the camp of, yep, I accept this.
So, thank you for those comments. I'm nowhere near comfort in deferring it, to be honest. But you know, and if anybody else would like to propose that when the time comes, I'll look at it probably in the best interest. But I must say, if that is the case going forward, and we do defer it, we defer the whole lot as it is, because it seems to me we're not happy with any of it. If we do defer it, and it has to come back here, and there's no significant benefit, any extras to what there is already, I will most definitely be saying, for me, not for you guys, but for me, I will be saying no next time, full stop. But, you know, so, right, so as everybody finished it, I think, sorry, Councillor Mifflin.
I think if we defer it, we're just kicking the can down the road, in my opinion. This is not the first time we've had this application. This is not the first time we've raised our concerns. we've been told the highways, that developers have said they don't have the money to put a roundabout in, to put the infrastructure in before, as we requested. So I don't think a deferral is, in my opinion, is not a good idea.
Yeah, that's
So
opinion.
for clarity, members, it's not that they haven't got the money to put the roundabout in. It's that the evidence before and the highways accept is that they don't need to put the roundabout in. It's not that they can't afford to. And there's a difference. And I just want for clarity, members, to remember, there's not an argument before us that officers are put into members which is backed up by evidence, and you know that the Highways Authority have agreed that there is a need for a roundabout straight away, but because of viability constraints, it can't be delivered to 200. The argument from the appellant, the applicant, and when we discussed the idea of requiring them to impose that condition, and we brought this report back in around February, was the legal advice was we will lose an appeal and we will get costs against that decision, because it's not about finance, it's about the evidence before us. And the evidence before us is that there is no need for this roundabout in highways terms until 200 dwellings. So if you might want it before that, but planning is not about negotiation, it's not about what you want, it's about what evidence based. And the evidence in relation to highways is you don't need that roundabout to 200. Thank you.
Come back to you there and say, in my submission just 10 minutes ago, my submission says it does. It's clear to see. Another 800 or 900 houses. Councillor French says it might more likely be 900 than 700. Well, she may well be right, but that adds even more pressure on the roundabout, having a roundabout in the thingy. But there we go, Councillor Marks.
I think we've been here very recently with Chatras. We actually had the highways officer sitting there who sat with his laptop and got very flustered when we discovered that we were working on 2002 information. We can either say no, okay, or we can at least give the applicant time to come back with another road study. Nobody wants to turn something like this down, but equally we need to be sure in our own minds we are right. And I don't think 2002, 2004 studies, we need something up to date today with what we're dealing with. And I think we need, almost need the highways officer back in here as well, so he can give the information as requested. So I'm still on the side of saying no, but I can see and I understand what Councillor Mifsud is saying, kicking the can down the road, but actually, let's try. We're trying to help them by trying to work to find a solution, or at least get some answers to some questions, which we haven't got at the present time.
I'm going to bring in Stephen now. Then I'll again Councillor French.
Thank you, Chair. Just to make an observation, having heard what members have had to say in the debate, is that if this goes to appeal, if members want to refuse this, whilst you're not bound by your previous committee determination, it is a consideration that you have to give significant weight to. If you're now departing from it, you need to do so with more than just personal opinion or anecdotes or feelings that you're being hoodwinked by the Highway Authority. If this goes before an inspector, he or she will give great weight to the evidence from the Highway Authority, who we all know what the Highway Authority say about this. They're saying that a roundabout by 200 dwellings is acceptable. No inspector in the country is going to accept someone's personal opinion against that. So you will inevitably not only lose it and be back to square one where you are now, you will lose costs. And that might be several £100,000 of Fenland taxpayers' money. So I just wanted to reiterate, I'm sure you're all aware of that, but that's where we are.
Yes, thank you for that advice. I'm going to take Councillor French and Councillor Benny.
Thanks, Stephen, for that. I think we were already told that in the past. I don't like it, but I wouldn't push for the roundabout in first. My concern is the lack of sports facility, the lack of affordable housing. Okay, it's been evidence-based from highways, but highways don't always get it right. We were told, as Charlie said, about the one at Chatras on the 142. I mean, what a ridiculous, even the thought of us approving, I can't even remember the figure, on a 60-mile road. I mean, it's just absolutely ludicrous. So I understand what Stephen's saying with the roundabout. So I certainly wouldn't be pushing for that, because they will go to appeal and they'll win, and it'll cost us a lot of money. But with the other regards, I think we should have the ability to go back and ask them, move some of that 52 hectares of public open space into football pitches, cricket pitches, or something, because that side of March, so you've got the east and you've got the west, which really, there's only a road goes through them. There's nothing apart from a cricket club over there. Nothing else.
Okay. Councillor Benny? Yeah.
Yeah, I just want to pick up something there. The overall site is 53 hectares. Green infrastructure is 17 hectares. And of that, 14 hectares is open space. So going back to a comment earlier about the attenuation ponds. So the attenuation ponds obviously don't make up open space as such. That's why the open space is 14 hectares. And the green infrastructure, which would include the ponds, is 17 hectares. I know that we keep going over sizes, but it was the broad concept plan that required 5 hectares of on-site sports pitches, not this application. But as, again, just to clarify for the record, that the open space isn't 52 hectares, it's 14 hectares.
And back that members need to, if they're looking to argue there's under provision on this site, all I can highlight again is, members, is that they're proposing 2 pitches roughly here, which is roughly the same area as the broad concept plan accepted would provide pitches on this part of the site. And, I don't know what I'm doing wrong with it, it's me. Because Alan seems to get it to work fine. But yeah, it's the land to the north is where the majority of pitches are. So if members were to look into refuse on this ground, members would need to be able to articulate why they think the provision in line with the broad concept plan that is being delivered as part of this application is now contrary to policy and so harmful to warrant, or that there's no material considerations that mean it's so harmful it warrants a refusal. But looking at this, and if you were to get the broad concept plan, they sit roughly hand in glove with each other. There is not a requirement for all of the plan space to be provided on this site. The broad concept plan delivered it to the north, which is not part of this application. So if members are looking to raise concerns on that, that's the thistle you've got to grab, and that's the matter you're going to have to deal with, because an inspector is going to, like Stephen said in relation to the highways, the inspector is going to look at the broad concept plan and say, this provides plan pitches broadly in line with that, where is the harm? And that's what you need to be able to evidence in a reason for refusal if you are going to go down that route, members. Thank you, Chairman.
Right, thank you. I'm going to bring Councillor Benny in. I'm going to bring Councillor French, and I'm going to say, and I'm going to think what's the next step, and I shall put a proposal forward, and it'll be up to members to either agree or not agree, as the case may be. So I'm going to bring Councillor Benny. The floor is yours.
Thank you, Chairman. I've sat here and listened more than I've spoke, which is unusual for me. I don't think the sports provision is right. I have very serious concerns about the traffic. I think there is far too many developments within influencing distance around here that have not been taken into consideration. I truly could go against this and refuse it. I think this is going to be the last time we get to sit and look at this as a committee. Someone's mentioned deferral. If we go down the route of a deferral, personally, I don't think it's right, and I don't. But if this goes down the route of a deferral, what would we be looking to defer it for? And what would we be hoping to get out of it? Because there has to be a reason to defer if we go down deferral. And what are the objectives and what are the likelihood of us achieving that? Because if we defer it and it just comes back with the same thing and we go, well, we didn't like it last time, we're going to turn it down, where does that leave us? That is a question that I would have. I don't like it, but not liking something is not a reason to turn something down. I get that. There's a lot of question marks over this, but we're also looking at ratepayers' money, and this is going to be a couple 100,000, Stephen, maybe. Yeah, this ain't going to be a couple of grand on a bit of a misdemeanor. This is serious money, and we make big play of keeping council tax down and looking after the pennies. You don't throw good money like that around. That's a lot of money to chuck about. So, there's been a lot of debate here today. Where, as chairman, do you want this to go, Mr. Chairman?
Bring Councillor French, and then I'm going to hopefully tell you.
Thank you, Chairman. Yes, I realise the broad concept plan was done in 2014. Matt said, what's changed? A lot of things have changed. More people are exercising, more people are taking up sport, which governments are encouraging people to do. That's what's changed, and we lack facilities for people to do it.
Chairman, the issue is not about the level of, it's that the piece of land to the north still exists. It's not like this has been built on housing, and we can't force a developer to provide something that's outside of the broad concept plan, especially when it's supposed to be provided on a different parcel of land. Obviously, if it came in as a larger application and they want to move things around, we might accept that. But we can't. The point of the broad concept plan is to ensure that certain things do come forward, that as a holistic development, it's all there. We can't, as a decision-making authority, whether it's the LPA or whatever, force them to change that. That's not in our gift. The council have agreed it. And even if, because the point is, we're not saying, members aren't saying here that level of 5 hectares of pitches isn't enough for the broad concept plan, which would be a difficult thing. What we're trying to say is that this 5 hectares should be delivered on this site, but that's not what the broad concept plan says. So it's not just saying there's more public play and sport. That isn't a material consideration that would go against the broad concept plan that was adopted in 2014 that sits hand in glove with our local plan policy delivery. Right. We've got to understand why the issue is with the significant part of the pitches being delivered on a different parcel of land, which was always what was agreed. That's what you've got to wrestle with. Just saying that there's more people playing sport will not stand up to interrogation at appeal. I think Stephen's not. I was going to ask him for his opinion, but I think that might cover it.
I think you've covered it, yeah. Thank you.
So, the guy to the north, to my right-hand side, obviously sitting there, he won't sell the land. He's not interested in selling it. We heard that earlier. He's not interested in selling that. So the land directly opposite is in a different ownership, you say? Is that right? Okay, so we don't know. We don't know if the landowner to the north is actually said, well, I actually don't want to sell it. I actually don't want to sell it for whatever purpose. He doesn't agree with whatever, doesn't want to, don't need the money, likes to look out of his house and see nice open land. Whatever the reason, he does not have to sell it. No compulsory purchase at all. That doesn't fall into that equation. Eh?
It would.
It wouldn't if he said you don't want to sell it.
It would. CPO. That's exactly what CPO is for.
Yeah, but I mean,
exactly what it's
I don't think that would do that. It might do. It did on Ralph Butcher Bridge, but I'm not sure it would there because you have to exhaust every single avenue of negotiation, and well, you do because I was involved in it. So for me, I find it. We are where we are. So what I would like, and I've been a long while thinking about this as officers and members know, I was looking to refuse it, but I can see the relevance of what Stephen's saying and officers are saying. So my preference now would be to defer this because of the lack of open space. I don't care. I'm going to carry on, and then you can pull it to pieces where you like. That's fine. That's what my thoughts are. I feel that the lack of provision, the monies for affordable housing in phase one is too light. I think we should probably load that up front, not load it at the back, because no one knows what's going to happen at the back, and we probably need some more monies up the front. We should not be, as I said before, we should not be responsible for helping, for any cash flow problems or cash flow, not problems, but any cash flow that they may want to look after. The third thing is, I feel that it should be deferred. I think lots of developments, it's been mentioned by Councillor French and myself several times, that there has been a lot of building, as Councillor Benny said, in the vicinity. And I think it's going to put lots more pressure on that roundabout and on that Knights End junction. And that is what I feel is. I'm not asking to refuse it. I'm going to change my mind on that. But by deferring it, it could go back to the developers and ask them to allay our fears to put a better development for the people who deserve better in March. They deserve better, because this development will last could last 100 years, couldn't it? So it could last a lot longer. But this is substandard to me, and I'd like them to revisit. So that's where I am. So I'm not going to say any more, I'll do a proposal when needed. Councillor French?
Can I come back on you?
Yeah.
Chairman, I think the point that you've raised here is the first time any member has said this, and to be honest, you would quite like to touch on it, but it is a fair point in relation to delivery, which is not the same point as saying we need to provide it on this site. They're two separate matters. And it's a fair concern to say, well, we don't want to end up in a situation where we've got this parcel, those other parcels come forward, and that never comes forward. If members are significantly concerned about that, there could be triggers imposed within the Section 106 in relation to housing number and delivery and the pitches having to be delivered. That would need, to some extent, this is me very much shooting from the hip, so please pander to my whims as I waffle a little bit. We'd probably need to put some cap on this site to be able to wash its own face, and then above, but that would probably mean that also the other sites would need to be tied into this, so we'd have to bring the other scheme, I would suggest, from back for members to discuss this. But in theory, there's no decision notice has gone out on any of these sites, if I'm correct. So if members are concerned about all 2,000 houses coming forward and the planning pitches never coming forward, in theory, and I think probably if members were to defer this, we would look for a legal opinion explicitly on this to get some advice. We could look to have some trigger mechanism within the applications within the Section 106 that means that they wouldn't be able to all be built until whatever way, until the plan pitches have been all provided in totality, before the sites could be provided in totality, so all the housing would be built out. So that would, in theory, deal with the concerns in relation that the chairman's raised in relation to the pitches never coming forward. I still stand by we can't force the applicant to provide them on this site, but the concern you've just raised there is slightly parallel to that and not the same. And I think if members are looking to defer, I would suggest that officers would look to get a legal opinion to ensure that that is possible, because it is a little bit more complex with it being a BCP, not a allocated site, where on an allocated site that would be a standard part of the application. But yeah, that would be my suggestion in relation to that point. Thank you, Chairman.
I'm going to come back on that one. That's an improvement to where we were on that one. So yeah, I quite like that. I think that's perhaps a good an idea as we've got. Then the second point that I would like is the 10%, where they're offering the 10% on the first phase. I would like 20% all over the board. So we've got 20% the first phase, 20% the second phase, and 20% of the third phase. That seems more fair of that to me. So that's that one. And I'd also encourage Camps County Council to do highways, to do another traffic survey complete to rule out the need, after I've identified the problems that may come. So we could negotiate with the applicant to bring that roundabout forward. If they would do it after 75 houses or 50 houses or whatever, bring it forward, that would give me comfort. But for 201 houses, that doesn't give me any comfort, because that's 700. But 50 or even 75, I could accept that. But we could go back to them, and obviously they listen to this YouTube video, no doubt, and that'd give me some comfort that we were being listened to, and the people of March aren't being sold short by this whole of this development. Councillor French and Councillor Bennett.
Thank you. Yeah, I actually like Matt's suggestion to bring them all back, and we can get this sorted out. But I can't agree with what you just said with regard to the numbers on the roundabout, because we've been clearly told in the past, if we try to force that, if we try to force them to come down because they want to do how many, they can't take that to appeal, and we will be in big trouble. But I do like the idea of bringing the other applications back. But what I would support is refusal.
Through you, Chairman, obviously, if the application is deferred, we're happy to reconsult highways, but I do think we know the outcome. Even if we highlight the other debate, I think we know the outcome, but we're happy to engage with them and ask them to attend if they're willing to. But I think we know the outcome from 6 months ago when you had the legal opinion. Thank you, Chairman.
So if we go down that route, how quickly can you get the application back? Because what we don't want to do is we don't want to hold, because we're supposed to be open for business. We don't want to. So could it come back September, October?
Do you, Chairman? In theory, I don't see why not. It won't be able to come, because obviously we've got an extended period, because the way that the committees have fallen between now and the one, it's about 6 weeks or something, isn't it?
September 23rd.
So we've got obviously a lot longer than. So we'll have to consult highways. We'll have to give them some time. Obviously, we can't draft the report until they come back to us. The legal opinion probably shouldn't take too long. The only thing I would go back to the chairman's point in relation to the housing mix, and I think, or the delivery of affordable. Obviously, we have accepted previously that and 10% for the first phase was acceptable. I don't see any reason why we should revisit that. The report here asks to accept that we push the additional or the shortfall to the third phase rather than second phase. If members aren't keen on that, that's a separate point. But I don't think we should be looking to look like we're being obtuse. And viability is a consideration. I think in other sites we've accepted below 20% because it's not viable. We will still end up with the 20%. So some of the allocated schemes have actually provided very limited numbers. So I think generally, as an approach, it potentially could look like we're being a little bit argumentative if we try to get 20% straight from the off. And I think what members accepted previously would be a fair reflection still. But obviously, if you're deferring it, that'd be a discussion for next committee anyway. Thank you, Chairman.
Okay. So I think we've been round it now. We can't go any further. Chairman's officers have had a good input. This members have had a wonderful input on that. Officers haven't got any more to say. Members can't have anything to say and bring to the table new. So I'm going to circumvent that. So unless Stephen's got anything to say before we do, so I'm looking for a proposal. Have we got a proposal to go with officers' recommendation to approve this recommendation? To approve, to be clear. I'm looking around and I can't see anybody. So I'm looking for another proposal in keeping with this development here today. Councillor French, what are you proposing?
I propose what Matt suggested, that we defer this and look at the other applications as well. And the reasons Matt has already given them.
Okay. I'm happy to second that with an improviso that we do look at the 10% and we do liaise with highways again, irrespective of whether we get the roundabout or not. Ask CCC highways to have a look at the highways issues that may or may not occur, and ask them if they will, when it comes back next time out, if indeed we're all present when it does, to attend the meeting to get their presentation to give us some comfort that this will not happen. So I'm happy with that. So,
sorry, Chair, just one question. Do we need any clarification from Sport England as well?
Yeah.
The Chairman will be doing that anyway, so you know, that will feed into that. That's fine, because they've written to us, so we'll be engaging with them.
So sum it all up. I'm finishing now. So sum it all up. We've got a proposal to defer this. Councillor French is proposing it. I'm seconding it. Can I have a show of hands for that?
Unanimous decision, Chairman.
Yeah, thank you very much for that. Thank you, members. Thank you, officers, for being very patient this afternoon. Much appreciated. And it just leaves me to say now, this is Alan's last planning committee meeting. He's here, a very good officer. As I intimated yesterday to him, well, I said to him yesterday, he's a very good officer, and I'm really upset that he's leaving. And also not to forget Tom Donnelly, who was here and made a presentation this afternoon. He's also be greatly missed, a very good officer, and Fenland will be worse for those two leaving, in my opinion. Thank you. I'd also like to show your appreciation. Thank you very much. So after that, I declare, oh, blimey, goodness me, it's 5 o'clock. This meeting is now closed. Thank you.